A millionaire who seemed untouchable watches his empire brutally crumble, losing everything he had in just 3 months. Betrayed, abandoned, and without the resources to even feed his own daughters, he finds himself on the verge of collapse. It is then that the one person no one expected, the humble nanny who hadn't even received her salary, appears, bringing milk, diapers, and dignity. And this simple gesture, coming from the one who had the least, becomes the beginning of a story of redemption that the world could never have imagined. Robert Ashford held the phone with trembling hands as the lawyer repeated the same words for the 3rd time. 48 hours. That was all that was left before the arrest warrant was executed. $25 million in tax debts he had never incurred, but which now bore his name on every document, in every lawsuit, in every accusation piling up on his imported mahogany desk. The desk that was no longer his. The panoramic office on the 23rd floor of the most expensive commercial building in Charleston was empty. The paintings had been taken down the week before. The Entrepreneur of the Year trophies, the commemorative plaques, the photographs with politicians and celebrities he had proudly displayed, all packed into sealed boxes by the bailiffs. All that remained were the lighter marks on the walls where the frames had hung, ghosts of a glory that was crumbling like a sandcastle under the rising tide. Through the tempered glass windows, the Arthur Ravenel Jr. Bridge shone under the March sun. Below, tourists walked along the waterfront, oblivious to the drama unfolding 23 floors above. Robert watched a couple pushing a stroller and felt a pang in his chest. His daughters, Isabel and Sophia, 8 months old and already motherless, even though Vanessa was still breathing somewhere in the world. 6 months. It had been exactly 6 months since that September morning when he woke up to find only a note on the pillow. Scented paper, neat handwriting, words as cold as ice. "I'm not made for this. I can't do it. I'm sorry." She had taken the jewelry, her passport, 2 credit cards, and absolutely no remorse. The twins were sleeping in the next room, unaware of their abandonment. Vanessa hadn't even said goodbye to them. The phone vibrated again. Robert looked at the screen. Dr. Henry Foster, his lawyer of 15 years, the one who had sworn loyalty at every champagne toast, at every celebratory dinner after legal victories, the same one who was now demanding $40,000 in overdue fees before continuing to represent his interests. $40,000 he didn't have. Robert laughed. It was a strange, harsh sound that echoed through the empty office and came back to him like a mockery. 3 months ago, $40,000 was what he spent on a weekend in Paris. It was the price of renovating the bathroom in his master's suite. It was insignificant. Now it was an impossible fortune. He opened his Italian leather wallet. $60 in crumpled bills, that was all. The entire empire of 5 luxury hotels, $50 million in assets, 16 years of relentless work, reduced to $60 and a 48-hour deadline to find a solution that didn't exist. Paul Miller. The name hammered in his head like an accusation and a curse. His partner, his friend since college, the man he had trusted with half the business and with full access to the corporate accounts. Paul, who had disappeared 3 months ago, taking $18 million and leaving a trail of fraud, fake contracts and fabricated debts that fell entirely on Robert. The IRS didn't care about excuses. The creditors didn't accept explanations. The banking system had completely blocked him. His 5 properties, each valued at over $10 million, were seized. He couldn't sell, couldn't mortgage, couldn't even enter the buildings he had built with his own hands. 100 employees fired on a January afternoon. Robert still remembered their faces. The manager of the Isle of Palms Hotel, who had worked with him for 12 years. The head housekeeper at the Folly Beach property, a mother of 3. The executive chef of the downtown hotel, who had just bought a condo with his Christmas bonus, all fired without notice, without severance, without any adequate explanation other than, "The company is bankrupt. There's no money. We're sorry." Some cried, others cursed him. They all looked at him with the same mixture of incomprehension and anger. How could an empire built over 16 years collapse in 90 days? Robert loosened his Hermes tie, one of the last luxury items he still owned. Soon it too would be sold, just like the Swiss watch, the Italian shoes, the English suit. Everything would be turned into money to buy formula and diapers for the twins, Isabel and Sophia. Two tiny human beings who depended entirely on him, and he didn't even know how to prepare a bottle. During their 8 months of life, Robert had barely held them. There was always the nanny, there was always Vanessa, there was always someone more prepared. He was the provider, the man too busy building empires to change diapers or soothe crying babies in the middle of the night. Now he was all they had. The apartment on the Battery, a 5,000-square-foot penthouse overlooking the harbor, had also been seized. Robert had 1 week to vacate. He managed to rent a 450-square-foot apartment in North Charleston, a working-class neighborhood far from the touristy waterfront, far from his friends, far from the life he had known. 2 tiny bedrooms, a kitchen that could barely fit 1 person, a bathroom without a tub, $800 a month in rent that would consume more than 1/3 of the $60 he had left after his first small grocery run. His mother answered the phone coldly when he called for help. "Shame, Robert. You've brought shame upon us. The Ashford family has a reputation in this city. Your father built that over 50 years of honest work, and you destroyed it all in 3 months. The press won't stop calling. The neighbors look at us differently. No, you can't come here. Your sister agrees with me. It's best if you just disappear for a while." His own mother, the woman who had rocked him as a child, who had celebrated every achievement, who had been proud to introduce him as her successful entrepreneur son. Now she was closing the door on him, too ashamed to associate her name with his. Robert put the phone away and walked to the window. Down below, life went on. People worked, laughed, lived their ordinary lives, unaware that here, 23 floors up, a man was facing the total collapse of everything he had ever been. He thought of his daughters. Isabel had a dimple on her left cheek when she smiled. Sophia made a funny little noise when she was hungry, a high-pitched grunt that Vanessa had found irritating, but that he, on the rare occasions he paid attention, had found adorable. 2 innocent children who hadn't asked to be born, who hadn't chosen to have a bankrupt father, and a mother who had run away. What was he going to do? How would he feed them when the $60 ran out? How would he care for them alone when he could barely tell a diaper from a bib? How could he ensure they survived when he himself was on the edge of the abyss? The office door opened. Robert turned, expecting to see another bailiff or some impatient creditor. Instead, he saw a familiar figure standing in the doorway. Mary Evans was 28, with brown hair tied back in a ponytail, simple, clean clothes, and a cloth bag slung over her shoulder. She had worked as the twins' nanny since they were born, hired by Vanessa for a salary of $4,500 a month. When everything fell apart, when Robert dismissed all the household staff, the driver, the cook, the maids, Mary had also left. He hadn't been able to pay her for the last month of work. She must be here to collect her overdue salary, another creditor in the endless line of people he owed and couldn't pay. Mary entered the empty office, her steps echoing on the marble floor. She carried the cloth bag with effort, as if it weighed more than it looked. She stopped 10 feet from Robert, studying his face with those dark brown eyes that always seemed to see beyond appearances. "I brought some things for the girls," she said. Her voice was soft, without accusation, without anger. Robert blinked, confused. "Some things?" Mary opened the bag. From inside, she began to pull out cans of formula, packages of diapers, jars of baby food, a new pacifier still in its packaging, washed and ironed baby onesies. She arranged everything on the windowsill, organizing the items carefully. "I know things are hard," she continued, not looking at him. "And I know you don't owe me anything. But the girls aren't to blame. Isabel is starting to get her first teeth. She'll need a teether and that soothing gum gel. Sophia has a rash that needs a specific ointment. I brought it all here." Robert looked at the products lined up. They weren't cheap brands. It was all quality stuff, exactly what the twins had used before. Mary earned $4,500 a month. He hadn't paid her for the last month. That meant she had bought all of this with her own money. Money she barely had. Money she needed for her own survival. "Why?" The question came out hoarse. "Why are you doing this?" Mary finally faced him. She had lost her husband 3 years ago, Robert vaguely remembered. A work accident, Something to do with construction. Vanessa had mentioned it when she hired the young woman, saying that widows were more dedicated because they needed the job. "Because I understand," Mary answered simply. "I understand what it's like to lose everything overnight. I understand what it's like to have no one. And I understand that Isabel and Sophia are innocent. They deserve to be cared for no matter what happened to their parents' money." Robert felt something break inside his chest, an emotional dam he had held back for 3 whole months of disaster after disaster. He didn't cry, not yet, but the urge was there, pressing like water against a cracked dam. "I can't accept this," he said. "You've already done too much. I owe you a month's salary. I can't accept you spending even more money." "You're not spending it on me," Mary replied. "You're accepting help for your daughters. That's different." She picked up her empty bag and walked to the door. Before leaving, she turned one last time. "Where is the new apartment?" "North Charleston, the Magnolia Gardens Apartments, apartment 312. Mary nodded. "I'll stop by tomorrow morning to see if the girls are okay, to help with whatever you need." "I can't pay you," Robert said, and the words were like a confession of a bankruptcy greater than any lawsuit. "I can't pay anyone anything." "I know," she replied, "but that doesn't mean the girls should go hungry or be uncared for. We'll figure it out later, Robert, right? Now the important thing is to make sure Isabel and Sophia are safe." She left. Robert stood alone in the empty office, surrounded by cans of formula and packages of diapers bought with money a humble woman had spent on daughters that were not hers. A woman he barely knew beyond her name and her job. A woman who had every reason to demand payment, to complain, to turn her back on him just as everyone else had done. But she came back. And Robert Ashford, a bankrupt entrepreneur at 42, father of 8-month-old twins, a man who had built a $50 million fortune only to lose it all in 3 months, felt for the first time in a long time something that resembled hope. The apartment in North Charleston was a shoebox compared to what Robert had known for the past 15 years. 450 square feet, divided into 2 tiny bedrooms, a living room that barely fit a sofa, a kitchen where 2 people couldn't move at the same time. The walls had water stains in the corners, the floor was cheap, cracked ceramic tile, and the bathroom had an electric showerhead that hissed menacingly every time it was turned on. Robert carried in the last box of his things and set it on the living room floor. There wasn't much. Some clothes, documents, personal items the bailiffs had allowed him to take. The twins' crib, disassembled and leaning against the wall. 2 suitcases of baby clothes. A box of children's toys that Isabel and Sophia were still too young to use. The girls were sleeping in their double stroller, oblivious to the drastic change in their lives. Robert watched them for a long moment. Isabel had more defined curls. Sophia was a little chubbier. Both had. Vanessa's eyes, that honey-colored shade he had once found fascinating. Now seeing those eyes in his daughters was just a painful reminder of abandonment. It was 10 in the morning on a Thursday, 36 hours until the arrest warrant deadline. Robert sat on the cold floor of the empty living room and pulled out his phone. He had 17 unread messages. He didn't want to open any of them. He knew what they were. Demands for payment, veiled threats, old friends feigning concern but only wanting fresh gossip. Isabel stirred in her sleep and began to whimper, that characteristic little sound that indicated imminent hunger. Robert froze. He had the cans of formula Mary had brought, but he had no idea how to prepare a bottle. Vanessa had always done it. After she fled, Mary took over. He had just signed the checks and pretended to be a father. The whimper turned into a cry. Sophia woke up at the sound and quickly joined her sister. 2 babies crying in sync, hungry, wet, uncomfortable. Robert stood up in a panic, clumsily picking up Isabel. She felt heavier than he expected, or maybe he was just too weak to carry the weight of real fatherhood. "Easy, sweetheart," he murmured, rocking the baby with stiff movements that seemed to aggravate rather than soothe. Daddy's going to make a bottle, just need to... Where the hell are the bottles?" He searched frantically through the boxes while holding Isabel with one arm. Sophia was screaming in the stroller, her face red with indignation. Robert found 2 bottles in the second box he rummaged through. Now he needed the formula. It was in the kitchen, still sealed. With Isabel crying against his shoulder, Robert entered the cramped kitchen and tried to read. The instructions on the can. His hands were shaking. How many scoops? What temperature should the water be? He boiled water in the only electric kettle he had brought, waited for it to cool, threw 3 scoops of powder into the bottle without measuring properly, filled it with warm water, capped it and shook. The result looked too watery. He added another scoop, shook again. Isabel sucked on the bottle desperately. Robert sighed in relief and prepared another for Sophia, this time with more confidence. He sat on the living room floor with a baby in each arm, both of them nursing furiously, while staring at him with those questioning honey-colored eyes. "We're going to be okay," he said to them, or perhaps to himself. "Daddy will figure out how to do this. We're going to be okay." But he didn't believe his own words. 3 hours later, Robert discovered that 8-month-old babies needed more than milk. They needed solid food, purees, mashed fruits. The shelves of the small kitchen were empty. He had $60 and needed to make it last as long as possible. He put the twins in the stroller and went down to the corner market. The store was small, with peeling walls and rusty metal shelves. Nothing like the gourmet supermarkets Robert used to frequent. Here, people bought rice in 10-pound bags, beans in bulk, generic brands he didn't even know existed. An elderly woman was picking out bruised tomatoes because they were cheaper. A man in a construction uniform was counting change in his palm before buying a package of pasta. Robert pushed the double stroller through the narrow aisles, grabbing random items. Bananas, apples, a jar of processed baby food, bread, margarine, coffee. At the checkout, the total came to $53. He handed over a $100 bill, the largest he had. The cashier gave him back $47 in small bills and coins. Robert put the money away carefully, as if it were rare jewels. $47 remaining. Less than a week of survival if he was lucky. Back in the apartment, he tried to feed vegetable puree to Isabel. She spat it all out. Sophia accepted 3 spoonfuls before turning her face away in disgust. Robert looked at the half-full jar and felt like crying. His daughters were hungry, but they wouldn't accept the food he offered. What could he do? The phone rang. Unknown number. Robert answered apprehensively. "Mr. Ashford." A male voice, deep, formal. "My name is Gregory Thorne. I represent the Thorne Development Group. I'd like to schedule a meeting to discuss a proposal." "I have nothing to sell," Robert answered bitterly. "Everything is seized." "I'm not interested in buying your hotels," the voice said. "I'm interested in hiring you." Robert blinked. "Hiring me? I'm a bankrupt entrepreneur facing fraud charges. Why on earth would you hire me?" "Because I know you didn't commit fraud," Gregory replied. "I know it was Paul Miller, and I know you're an excellent director of operations when you're not too busy playing the arrogant boss. Can we meet tomorrow?" "Tomorrow I might be in jail," Robert said, his voice heavy with bitter irony. "Then we have to meet today. 6 o'clock at my office on the Battery. Can you make it?" Robert looked at the twins playing on the floor. Isabel was trying to grab her own foot. Sophia was drooling on her rubber teether. 2 children depending on him. 2 children who would starve if he went to jail. "I'll be there," he said. The afternoon dragged on heavily. Robert changed diapers for the first time in his life, fumbling with the adhesive tabs, getting everything crooked, but it worked. He bathed the girls in the small bathroom sink, terrified of letting them slip. He prepared more bottles, this time reading the instructions carefully. At 5:30 he put the twins in the stroller and took the bus to the Battery. It was strange. Robert hadn't ridden a bus in 20 years. He paid the fares with coins, holding onto the double stroller as the vehicle swayed with every turn. A lady offered to help. A young man gave up his seat so he could sit with the babies. Small kindnesses from strangers. Robert had never noticed them before. The Thorne commercial building was imposing, 15 floors of mirrored glass. Robert knew the building, of course. He knew the owner too, from a distance. Gregory Thorne had a reputation for buying bankrupt companies, restructuring them, and reselling them at a profit. A corporate vulture, some said. A business genius, others argued. The receptionist looked surprised to see Robert pushing the baby stroller. She recognized his name and granted him access without questions. 14th floor, presidential suite. Gregory Thorne was a man, in his 60s, with grey hair combed back, an impeccable grey suit and gold-rimmed glasses. He greeted Robert with a firm handshake and smiled when he saw the twins. "You brought company," he commented. "Your daughters?" "I had no one to leave them with," Robert replied defensively. "If it's a problem, I can leave." "No problem at all," Gregory signaled to his secretary. "Maria, could you have someone bring 2 glasses of juice and some cookies, and maybe a children's toy we have around here?" He gestured to the leather armchairs. Robert sat, keeping the stroller beside him. Isabel was observing everything with curiosity. Sophia was trying to reach a pen holder on the desk. "I'll be direct," Gregory began. "I've investigated your case. I know Paul Miller fled with 18 million. I know he forged documents placing you as responsible for non-existent debts. I know you're clean, but that the system will take months or years to recognize it. Until then, you'll be destroyed." Robert said nothing. Every word was a painful truth. "I can solve your problem," Gregory continued. "I will pay all your tax debts, $25 million. I'll settle with the creditors, suspend the arrest warrant, clear your name enough for you to breathe." "And what do you want in return?" Robert asked, suspicious. 5 years of work as my director of operations, a salary of $250,000 a year. No bonuses, no profit sharing, no perks. Just hard work coordinating my 6 hotels. Robert did the math in his head. $250,000 a year for 5 years would be $1.25 million. Gregory would pay $25 million to get $1.25 million back. The numbers didn't add up. "Why?" he asked. "This doesn't make financial sense." Gregory smiled. "For you it doesn't. For me it makes perfect sense. I bought your 5 seized hotels for $20 million. Their market value is $50 million. When I restructure and resell, I'll have a profit of $30 million. Investing $25 million to clear your name and then hiring you to help me manage these properties is a smart operational cost." "So you're buying my slave labor for 5 years," Robert said bitterly. "I'm buying your freedom," Gregory corrected, "and offering you an honest job in return. You can refuse, you can go to jail, fight in court, maybe prove your innocence in 3 or 4 years. But what about your daughters? Who will take care of them while you rot in a cell awaiting trial?" Robert looked at Isabel and Sophia. They were everything, literally all that was left. "Where do I sign?" Gregory pushed a folder across the desk. 5-year contract, $250,000 a year. Total exclusivity. You can't work for anyone else. You can't start a business. You can't open a company. You can't invest. Just work for me for the next 60 months. "It's a predatory contract," Robert said, flipping through the pages. "It's a survival contract," Gregory replied, "and we both know it." Robert picked up the pen. His hands were no longer shaking. The choice was clear. He signed every page, every clause, every line that bound him for 5 years to a salary that was paltry compared to what he once earned. When he finished, Gregory shook his hand again. "Welcome to the Thorne Group. You start Monday, 8 a.m. office at the Charleston North Hotel. I'll be there to introduce you to the team." Robert took his copy of the contract and stood up. Isabel was asleep. Sophia was chewing on a rubber toy the secretary had brought. "One last thing," Gregory said as Robert reached the door. "I don't expect gratitude. I expect excellent work. If you disappoint me, there will be severe contractual consequences. Is that clear?" "Crystal clear," Robert replied. He left the building pushing the stroller, the last rays of sun tinging the waters of the bay with orange. He had a job. He had a salary. He had a path, even if it was narrow and suffocating. And he had one more night of freedom before starting 5 years of servitude. The night was long and torturous. Isabel woke up crying at 2 in the morning, followed by Sophia half an hour later. Robert stumbled through the dark apartment, preparing bottles with half-closed eyes, changing diapers in the dim light of his phone because he couldn't find the light switch in the bedroom. When he finally managed to get them both back to sleep, it was already 4:30, and he couldn't fall asleep again. He sat on the living room floor, leaning against the cold wall, watching the silent city through the small window. Outside, North Charleston was sleeping. Few lights were on. The streets were empty. The occasional distant bark of a dog. So different from the Battery, where the nightlife pulsed until dawn, where the view from his penthouse showed a sea of lights and constant movement. Robert thought about the contract he had signed. 5 years, 60 months, 1,825 days of working for Gregory Thorne, earning less in a year than he used to spend in a quarter. But he was alive. He was free. And his daughters would have food, a roof over their heads, a future. At 6 in the morning there was a knock on the door. Robert answered barefoot, still in his wrinkled pajamas. Mary was there with a backpack on her shoulders and 2 bags in her hands. She wore faded jeans and a simple cotton blouse, her hair down, framing her makeup-free face. "Good morning," she said. "I brought breakfast. May I come in?" Robert stepped aside, still processing her presence. Mary walked in and went straight to the kitchen, organizing the bags on the narrow counter. Bread, butter, cheese, ham, fruit, a jar of jam, milk. She opened the empty cabinets, located plates and cups as if she knew the place. "How did you know where I live?" Robert asked, leaning against the doorframe. "You told me yesterday, the Magnolia Gardens Apartments, apartment 312. She started making coffee in the old coffee maker he had brought. "I figured you'd need help in the first few mornings. Babies are tough when you're not used to them." "I can't pay you," Robert said for the second time in 2 days. "Mary, I appreciate everything you're doing, but I have to be honest. I signed a work contract yesterday. I'll be making $250,000 a year. It sounds like a lot, but when you divide it between rent, bills, food, diapers, formula, the girls' medicine, there's almost nothing left. I can't hire a nanny. Not now." Mary poured coffee into 2 cups. She pushed one towards Robert and took a sip from the other. "I'm not offering myself as charity," she said calmly. "I'm offering myself as a practical solution to a real problem. You have a job. You need to work. You can't take 2 babies to the office. Therefore, you need someone to take care of them while you work." "But I can't pay a fair wage for the job," Robert insisted. $4,500 was little even when I had money. Now it's impossible." "Then pay me what you can," Mary replied. $1,500, $2,000, whatever fits your budget, I'll accept." $1,500 a month to take care of 2 babies full-time? Robert shook his head. "That's exploitation. I won't do that." Mary put her cup in the sink and faced him directly. "Listen, Robert. I lost my husband 3 years ago. I was left alone, with no money, no home, nothing. A neighbor took me in. Mrs. Peterson was 70, a widow too, retired on a minimal pension. She gave me a room in her house, food on the table, and work cleaning and cooking. She paid me $800 a month, which was all she could spare from her meager retirement." She paused, remembering. "I could have refused. I could have said that $800 was exploitation, but $800 with a roof and food was better than $0 sleeping on the street. Mrs. Peterson saved me, and when she got sick, I took care of her. When she passed away, she left her small house to me in her will. Everything I have today is because someone helped me when no one else would." Robert didn't know what to say. Mary continued, her voice firm but gentle. "Isabel and Sophia have known me since they were born. I saw their first smiles. I changed their first diapers. I sang them to sleep hundreds of nights. When Vanessa ran away and you fell apart, I stayed. Not for the money, but because these girls matter to me." "So it's not about a fair wage," she concluded. "It's about being present where I'm needed. You pay me what you can. I'll take care of your daughters, and everyone wins. Or do you have a better option?" Robert didn't. She knew it. He knew it. The silence stretched for long seconds, broken only by the gurgling of the coffee maker. $2,000, Robert said finally. "With adjustments when my situation improves. A formal registered contract, all legal, and you don't buy anything else for the girls with your own money. Everything they need, I'll provide. Deal?" Mary extended her hand. "Deal." They shook hands, sealing the pact. At that moment, Isabel woke up with her characteristic whimper. Mary smiled and went to the bedroom, picking up the baby with natural ease. "Good morning, Princess," she murmured, kissing the child's forehead. "Let's change this diaper and have some breakfast, shall we?" Robert watched the scene. Mary talking softly to Isabel while changing her diaper, the baby responding with happy gurgles. There was a lightness there, a genuine connection that he, the biological father, had not yet developed with his own daughters. Mary prepared homemade baby food, mashing a banana with oatmeal and a little milk. Isabel ate everything, licking her lips with satisfaction. Sophia woke up soon after and received the same treatment. While the babies ate, Mary explained to Robert their schedules, needs, and the quirks of each one. Isabel likes to be rocked to the left. Sophia prefers the right. Isabel sleeps better with soft music. Sophia needs total silence. Small details that made a huge difference. Details Robert had never noticed because he had never been present enough. "My first day of work is Monday," he said. 3 days to prepare. 3 days to learn to be a father, Mary corrected gently. "I'll teach you everything, but you have to be willing to learn." Robert nodded. For the first time, in months, he didn't feel completely alone facing the abyss. The weekend flew by. Mary showed up on Saturday and Sunday, teaching Robert how to give a proper bath, how to prepare various purees, how to identify different types of cries. She brought her own things to the apartment, occupying the second tiny bedroom with a used single bed she had bought. "Are you moving in?" Robert asked, surprised when he saw the move. "It makes more sense," Mary explained. "If I stay here full-time, I can take care of the girls through the night. You'll be working a lot, I imagine. You need to rest properly. Besides, it doesn't make sense for me to pay rent somewhere else when there's a spare room here." "But your privacy," Robert protested. Mary shrugged. "Privacy is a luxury for those who can afford it. I choose practicality. The girls need stability, that's more important." Monday dawned grey, threatening rain. Robert put on one of the suits he had saved from the financial shipwreck, a grey Armani that had once cost $5,000. Now it felt like a costume from a past life. He adjusted his tie, combed his hair, and looked at himself in the cracked bathroom mirror. The man staring back was a stranger. Deep dark circles under his eyes, a thinner face, something broken in his gaze. But there was also something new. Determination, perhaps, or just desperation disguised as courage. Isabel and Sophia were having breakfast with Mary when he came out of the room. The 2 babies looked at him, Sophia extending her little arms. Robert picked her up, kissed her forehead, and did the same with Isabel. "Daddy will be back soon," he promised, not knowing if his daughters understood. "Be good girls for Mary." "They always are," Mary said, smiling. "Go on, don't worry, everything's under control here." Robert grabbed his briefcase and left. The bus was crowded, people squeezing together, the smell of sweat mixed with cheap perfume. He held onto the straps as the vehicle swayed, surrounded by workers who faced that routine every day. People who earned minimum wage, who struggled to survive, who truly knew the meaning of effort. People he had always ignored while driving his Mercedes down the same streets. The Charleston North Hotel was located on the mainland, away from the tourist spots, focused on corporate guests, a 20-story building, modern facade, 4-star standard. Robert knew the property well. He had tried to buy it twice in the past, but the former owner had refused his offers. Now it belonged to Gregory Thorne, and Robert was just an employee. The reception was busy, guests checking out, operators answering calls. Robert identified himself and was directed to the 3rd floor, the administration office. Gregory was already there, talking to a middle-aged woman in a navy blue suit. "Punctual," Gregory commented approvingly. "Excellent start. Robert, this is Beatrice Collins, the general manager of the hotel for the past 8 years. Beatrice, this is Robert Ashford, our new director of operations." Beatrice studied Robert with an assessing gaze. She didn't offer her hand. "I know Mr. Ashford," she said, her voice icy. "I've read about him in the papers. A lot." Her tone made it clear that nothing she had read was positive. Robert swallowed the defensive retort that rose to his throat. "I imagine so," he replied calmly. "And I imagine you've formed an opinion of me." "Understandable." Gregory intervened. "Robert will be working directly with me, overseeing operations for all 6 hotels in the chain. Beatrice, you will continue to report to him on matters concerning the Charleston North. I expect professional cooperation from both parties. Beatrice nodded stiffly. Of course, Mr. Thorne, always professional. But the look she gave Robert clearly said that professionalism had its limits, and he had already crossed them before he even started. The third-floor meeting room could hold 20 people. When Robert entered with Gregory, he found 16 employees seated around the long laminate table. Managers, supervisors, coordinators from different departments. They all stopped talking when they saw him. The silence was heavy, laden with unspoken judgment. Robert recognized a few faces. Not all but some. And from the way they stared at him, it was clear they all recognized him. Gregory took the head of the table. Good morning, everyone. As I informed you last week, I've hired a new director of operations to oversee our 6 hotels. Robert Ashford brings 16 years of experience in the luxury hotel sector and a deep knowledge of the South Carolina market. A man in his mid-30s, sitting in the middle of the table, coughed loudly. The sound was clearly intentional. Robert vaguely recognized him. Someone connected to the Folly Beach Hotel, perhaps. Any questions? Gregory asked, his tone challenging. I have one. A young woman raised her hand. Black hair pulled back in a severe bun, a starched white blouse. My name is Paula Jennings. I've been a housekeeping supervisor here for 4 years. My question is simple. Was Mr. Ashford hired despite or because of his recent reputation? Gregory opened his mouth to answer, but Robert interrupted him. May I answer that? Gregory hesitated, then nodded. Of course. Robert stood up. He walked to the window, his back to the employees for a moment, organizing his thoughts. When he turned around, he met every gaze. Because of, he said clearly, Mr. Thorne hired me exactly because of everything that has happened in the last 3 months, because I lost a $50 million empire, because I was betrayed by my partner, because all my mistakes were publicly exposed, because I learned in the hardest school possible what it means to fail. He paused. The room remained in absolute silence. Before I lost everything, I was a terrible boss. I was arrogant, distant, sometimes cruel. I fired 43 employees days before Christmas 2 years ago because I needed to save $40,000 to buy a yacht I didn't need. 43 people with families, bills, responsibilities. I let them go without notice, without consideration, without remorse. He saw some faces tighten. Others glanced at each other. The man who had coughed crossed his arms, clearly expecting a pathetic justification. I'm not going to justify myself, Robert continued. I'm not going to say I was under pressure or that I had valid reasons. I didn't. I was simply a businessman who saw people as numbers on a spreadsheet. Profit mattered. Comfort mattered. My ego mattered. Human beings did not. Paula Jennings leaned forward. And what changed? Why should we believe you're different now? Because now I know what it's like to be the number on the spreadsheet, Robert answered. I know what it's like to go to sleep not knowing if you'll have food tomorrow. I know what it's like to be judged and condemned without a chance to defend yourself. I know what it's like to lose everything and depend on the kindness of strangers to survive. That changes a person, Ms. Jennings. It either destroys you completely or it rebuilds you differently. And you've been rebuilt, she challenged. I'm being rebuilt, Robert corrected. It's a process, not an event. Every day I wake up choosing to be better than I was yesterday. Some days I succeed, others I fail. But the difference is that now I recognize the failures. Before I didn't even notice. The man who had coughed spoke up. My name is Charles Reed. I was the maintenance manager at the Folly Beach Hotel for 8 years. You fired me in December of 2022, 3 days before Christmas. My daughter had leukemia. Her treatments depended on the company's health insurance. When I lost my job, I lost the plan. I had to sell my car to pay for her medicine. Robert felt as if he had been punched in the stomach. He took a deep breath. Mr. Reed, I have no words to compensate for what I did. Apologies are insufficient. But you are right to be here confronting me. You are right to hate me. You have every right. Charles stood up slowly. Your daughter? How is she? She's alive, Charles said. In remission for 6 months, but no thanks to you. Thanks to you, Robert said. Thanks to your strength as a father. How is she now? Well, I hope. Why do you care? Charles shot back. Why pretend to care? Because I have 2 8-month-old daughters, Robert answered, his voice breaking slightly. And in the last 3 months I've learned that I would be capable of selling everything, of doing anything, of crawling on my hands and knees if necessary to ensure they have what they need. So when I think about what I did to you, when I imagine losing access to my daughter's treatments because of a boss's cruelty, I understand the weight of what I caused, and it destroys me. Charles stood still, processing. The silence in the room was so thick that the hum of the air conditioning sounded like a roar. I don't expect forgiveness, Robert continued, from you or anyone else here. But I ask for one thing. Judge me by the work I do from now on, not just by the mistakes I've made. Give me a chance to prove that it's possible to learn, to change, to be different. Gregory finally intervened. Robert is here because I believe in second chances. We all deserve them. But second chances come with responsibility. Robert will work under my direct command. Any inappropriate behavior, any sign of returning to old patterns, and the contract will be terminated immediately. That is a guarantee I give to all of you. An older woman, sitting at the back of the room, timidly raised her hand. I knew your father, son, Mr. Edmund Ashford. I worked as a maid in his hotel in the 90s. He was a good man. Fair. He treated everyone with respect, from the manager to the janitor. He would be ashamed of what you became. The words hit Robert like lashes. Yes, ma'am, he agreed, his voice hoarse. He would be, and I carry that shame every day. But your father also believed that people could change, she continued. He believed in giving opportunities, so I'll do as he would have done. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt, but you'll have to prove it with actions, not with pretty words. I will do that, Robert promised. Thank you. The meeting continued for another hour. Gregory explained the operational changes he planned to implement. Robert remained quiet for most of the time, observing, listening, learning. When it was over, the employees left in small groups, some casting curious glances, others clearly still hostile. Charles Reed was the last to leave. At the door he stopped and looked back. My daughter's name is Laura, he said. She's 9. She likes to draw horses. When you fired me, she was undergoing chemotherapy and asked every day why Daddy was sad. I would lie and say everything was fine, but it wasn't. And she knew. He held the doorknob. You said you have 2 daughters. Take good care of them. Be the father they deserve. Because one day they'll grow up and judge the man you chose to be, and that judgment hurts more than any other. Charles left. Robert stood in the middle of the empty room, absorbing the impact of his words. Gregory was arranging papers in his briefcase, giving him time to compose himself. That went well, Gregory said eventually. It could have been disastrous, but you were honest. That counts for something. Being honest is the bare minimum, Robert replied. It doesn't make me a hero, just less of a coward than I was before. Gregory closed his briefcase. Tomorrow you visit the other 5 hotels, meet the teams, evaluate operations, identify problems. I want a full report by Friday. Can you do that? I'll do my best. Your best needs to be excellent, Gregory said bluntly. This contract primarily benefits you. Don't forget that. I paid $25 million to clear your name. I expect a return on that investment. Robert nodded. Understood. He left the hotel at 6 in the evening, mentally and emotionally exhausted. The bus back to North Charleston was even more crowded than in the morning. Robert was pushed to the back, squeezed between a sweaty man in a construction uniform and an elderly woman carrying grocery bags. The heat was suffocating, the smell unbearable. But no, one complained. It was just another day in the routine of those who depended on public transportation. Robert thought of Charles Reed. He thought of 9-year-old Laura, drawing horses while battling leukemia. He thought of the 43 employees he had fired that cruel December. He thought of how many lives he had casually destroyed, without a second thought, just to buy a yacht he used 3 times before selling at a loss. How did he become that man? When exactly did ambition turn into cruelty? When did financial success begin to justify any means, any sacrifice of another's dignity? The bus stopped at his stop in North Charleston. Robert got off, walked the 3 blocks to the Magnolia Gardens apartments, and took the elevator to the 3rd floor. Before opening the apartment door, he took a deep breath, trying to leave the weight of the day outside. When he entered, he found Mary on the old donated sofa, Isabel and Sophia sitting on either side of her, the 3 of them watching a cartoon on the small television. The babies looked up when they heard the door, Sophia clapping her hands when she saw him. "Dada!" she gurgled, stretching out her little arms. Robert picked her up, kissed her chubby cheek and felt something tighten in his chest. Sophia smelled of baby soap and powder. She was clean, fed, happy, thanks to Mary. "How was the first day?" Mary asked, Isabel still clinging to her. "Difficult," Robert admitted. "Very difficult, but necessary." Mary nodded understandingly. "Dinner's on the table. I made rice, beans and chicken. Nothing fancy, but it fills you up." Robert looked at the small kitchen table. 3 plates, 3 glasses, silverware arranged. A simple meal made by someone who barely knew him but who had chosen to stay when everyone else had fled. "Thank you," he said, "for everything." Mary smiled. "That's what I'm here for." And at that moment, in the tiny apartment in North Charleston, with 2 babies and a woman who wasn't his family but acted as if she were, Robert Ashford felt something he hadn't felt in a very long time, something like belonging. The next 2 months passed in a whirlwind of intense work and constant adaptation. Robert visited the 6 hotels of the Thorn Group every week, getting to know the teams, identifying problems, and proposing solutions. He worked 12, 14 hours a day, arriving home when Isabel and Sophia were already asleep and leaving before they woke up. Mary kept everything running. She cared for the twins with a dedication that went beyond professional obligation. She prepared simple but nutritious meals for the 3 of them. She kept the apartment clean despite the cramped space. She never complained, never demanded anything, just did what needed to be done with quiet efficiency. Robert paid her the $2,000 religiously on the first day of each month. It was money that was tight in their budget, but it was also a debt of gratitude he could never fully repay. On a Thursday in May, Robert was at the Isle of Palms Hotel reviewing occupancy reports when Beatrice Collins appeared at the door of the room he was using as a temporary office. She knocked on the open door and waited for permission to enter. "Come in, Beatrice," Robert said without looking up from his papers. "Do you need something?" She entered and stood on the other side of the desk. After a moment, Robert realized she wouldn't speak until she had his full attention. He set the documents aside and looked at her. "I came to apologize," Beatrice said abruptly, "for the way I treated you on the first day. I was rude, hostile, and unprepared. You didn't deserve that, or at least not in that way." Robert blinked in surprise. "You had every reason to be hostile. I don't blame you." "It's not about having reasons," Beatrice replied. "It's about being professional, and I failed at that, so I apologize." Robert leaned back in his chair. "I accept your apology, and I offer mine as well. For everything you read about me, for the reasons that made you judge me, negatively before you even met me. All of that is true, I was that man. But you're not anymore," Beatrice said, "at least not based on what I've seen in the last 8 weeks. Robert raised an eyebrow. "What have you seen?" "That you listen," she said simply. "When the employees speak, you pay attention. When we present problems, you look for solutions instead of culprits. When we make mistakes, you correct without humiliating. That's rare, especially from someone who has been at the top." She pulled up a chair and sat down uninvited. "Do you know why I was so hostile at first? Because I've worked for people like you used to be. Bosses who treated employees like disposable parts, who fired people on Christmas Eve, who cut benefits to buy new cars. I've seen the worst of human nature in corporate environments, and when Gregory said he was hiring you, I thought, here comes another one, but I was wrong. I'm still learning," Robert said honestly. "There are days I fall back into old patterns. I get impatient, arrogant. Mary has to remind me to be kind." "Who's Mary?" "My daughter's nanny." Robert hesitated, then continued. "But she's more than that. She's the one who keeps my life running, who takes care of everything that matters while I work, who teaches me every day by example how to be a better person." Beatrice smiled. "It seems you were lucky to find her." "It wasn't luck," Robert corrected. "It was mercy, hers, not mine. I didn't deserve the kindness she showed me. No one should have been so generous to someone who failed as I did." Beatrice stood up. "Well, as philosophical as that is, I also came here for a practical reason. We have a problem with the air conditioning system. 3 units on the 5th floor burned out. The company we always hire wants $40,000 to replace everything." "40,000?" Robert frowned. "Why? What's the technical justification?" "They say the whole system is obsolete, needs a complete modernization." "But how long ago were the units installed?" 5 years. Robert opened his laptop and started searching for information. He found the specific model of the air conditioner, checked the technical specifications, and read about recommended maintenance. After 15 minutes, he looked at Beatrice. "The system isn't obsolete. It's poorly maintained. 3 units burning out simultaneously indicates an electrical problem, not a mechanical one. Did anyone perform the mandatory semi-annual electrical inspection?" Beatrice shuffled through the papers she had brought. "I can't find a record for the last 6 months. "Then the problem isn't the air conditioning," Robert said. "It's negligence in preventive maintenance. Hire a qualified electrician to assess the wiring. I bet you'll find an overload or a bad splice. Fix that first, then see if you really need to replace the units. You'll probably just need a deep cleaning and some minor parts replaced. The total cost shouldn't exceed $8,000. Beatrice took notes. "How do you know so much about HVAC systems?" "Because I started my career fixing air conditioners in hotels," Robert replied. "Before I was a businessman, I was a technician. I learned the business from the ground up, literally climbing on roofs to clean compressors. I only became arrogant when I forgot where I came from." Beatrice put her papers away. "I'll follow your guidance. And Robert, thank you for not being who I feared you were." After she left, Robert stared at the closed door. Acceptance, respect, things he once had in excess and now had to earn. Back one person, one action at a time. His cell phone rang. An unknown number. He answered cautiously. "Robert Ashford?" A female voice, young, nervous. "Yes, who is this?" "My name is Amanda. Amanda Gibson. You don't know me, but you knew my father. Frank Gibson." Robert searched his memory. Frank Gibson. The name sounded familiar, but he couldn't place it. "I'm sorry, I don't recall." "He was the events manager at your downtown hotel for 6 years, Amanda said. "You fired him in December of 2022. It clicked. Frank Gibson. A man in his early 50s, always smiling, excellent, with corporate clients. Robert had fired him because he was cutting costs. He was one of the 43. "I remember," Robert said softly. "How can I help you?" There was silence on the other end. Then Amanda spoke, her voice choked. "My father passed away last month, a heart attack. He had been working as an app-based delivery driver since you fired him, because no one else wanted to hire a 54-year-old man. He rode a bike 12 hours a day trying to pay the bills. His heart couldn't take it." Robert felt the world collapse again. "I'm so sorry," he said inadequately. "I'm so very sorry." "I didn't call for you to hear apologies," Amanda cut in, her voice firmer now. "I called because I was going through his things, and I found a notebook, a journal where he wrote every day, and in it, repeatedly, he wrote about you." "What did he write?" Robert asked, not wanting to know but needing to hear. "That he admired you," Amanda said, and Robert hadn't expected that. "That you were his mentor in the early years, that you taught him event management techniques that no college taught, that he considered you a friend. And then he wrote about the day he was fired, about how you didn't even look him in the eye, how you signed his termination paper while on another call, how he left your office and you had already forgotten his name." Every word was a twisting knife. Robert had no defense, no excuse. "After that," Amanda continued, "he wrote about shame, about going to interviews and being rejected for his age, about feeling useless, but he never wrote with anger towards you. Only sadness, disappointment. He died disappointed, not hateful. and I don't know which is worse. Why are you telling me this? Robert asked, his voice hoarse. Because I found a recent newspaper article in the middle of the journal about your downfall, about you losing everything. And underneath it, my father wrote, I hope he learns what really matters. I hope his daughters teach him how to be human again. Amanda paused. My father was too good, too optimistic. Even after what you did, he still had hope that you would become better. So I'm not calling to curse you or demand anything. I'm calling to ask, was he right? Did you learn or... Your daughter's teaching you. Robert looked out the window. Outside, tourists walked along Isle of Palms beach, oblivious to the human dramas unfolding in the buildings around them. Yes, he said, they are teaching me. I don't know if I'm learning fast enough, but I'm trying. Every day I'm trying. Well, Amanda said, that's all I wanted to know. And Robert, my father deserved better than what you gave him. He deserved respect. He deserved dignity in his departure. Remember that when you're hiring or firing people from now on. Remember that every name on a spreadsheet is a Frank Gibson, a father, a mentor, a complete human being. I will remember, Robert promised. And Amanda, thank you for calling. I know I didn't even deserve that, but thank you. She hung up without replying. Robert sat there holding the phone, processing the conversation. Frank Gibson. Another ghost in the growing catalogue of his mistakes. But instead of just carrying guilt, Robert took out a notebook and wrote down the name. Frank Gibson, Events Manager, 6 years of service, fired December 2022, deceased April 2025. He already had 11 names written down, people he had managed to locate from the 43 he had fired, people to whom he owed more than just apologies. He owed them restitution, if possible, dignity at the very least. When he got home that night, it was almost 10. Mary was in the kitchen preparing something. The twins were asleep. Robert left his briefcase at the entrance and went straight to their room. Isabel and Sophia shared a modified crib, sleeping side by side. They were 10 months old now, growing fast, changing every day. Isabel was already trying to stand up, holding onto the bars. Sophia drooled less but laughed more. 2 tiny people, with unique personalities developing before his eyes, people who would one day grow up and ask about the father they had, who would ask about choices, about character, about legacy, and Robert wanted to have better answers than just excuses. Mary appeared at the bedroom door. Tough day? She asked quietly. Revealing, Robert corrected. I got a call from the daughter of a man I fired. He passed away last month. His heart couldn't handle the stress. Mary came in and stood beside him, both of them watching the babies sleep. You can't change the past, she said gently. You can only work to be different in the future. I know, Robert looked at her, but sometimes the weight of the past feels too heavy to carry towards a better future. Then let me help you carry it, Mary offered. We're not alone in this, Robert. You, me, the girls. We're kind of a team now, aren't we? Robert smiled for the first time that day. We are, and I'm grateful for that every single day. June brought an unusual cold spell to Charleston. The mornings dawned chilly, fog covering the streets of North Charleston, transforming the working-class neighborhood into a ghostly scene. Robert would wake up at 5:30, make coffee while trying not to make noise, and take a quick shower under the head that hissed electrical threats. Mary would wake up at 6, always before the twins, always with an energy Robert envied. She would prepare bottles, organize clothes, and hum children's songs while she worked. There was something comforting in her routine, in the predictability of her unfailing care. Isabel and Sophia would wake up at 6:30 on the dot, as if they had a synchronized internal alarm. Robert would hear them from the bathroom, their joyful squeals, their laughter when Mary appeared in the room. Sometimes he would stop shaving just to listen, absorbing those sounds of life happening in spite of everything. At work, Robert implemented gradual but significant changes. He improved employee schedules, providing fairer days off. He reviewed suppliers, cutting out expensive middlemen, and negotiating directly with producers. He instituted weekly meetings where any employee could present suggestions without fear of retaliation. The results appeared. Guest satisfaction rose 17% in 2 months. Operational costs fell 12% without any loss of quality. Employee turnover practically vanished. Gregory Thorne noticed. On a rainy Friday, he summoned Robert for a meeting at his main office. "The numbers don't lie," Gregory said, flipping through reports. "You're delivering results that exceed my expectations. The Charleston North had its best June in 5 years. The Isle of Palms is operating at a record occupancy rate. Even the Folly Beach Hotel, which was always problematic, is now profitable." "Thank you," Robert said simply. Gregory took off his glasses and calmly cleaned the lenses. "It's interesting," he continued. "When I hired you, I bet that necessity would create excellence. A desperate man works hard. But you're not just working hard. You're working smart. You're truly thinking of the hotels as complex organisms, not just sources of profit." Robert didn't reply, waiting for the other shoe to drop. There was always another shoe. "I want to offer you something," Gregory said. "A promotion, a salary increase to $350,000 a year, and a special project in Myrtle Beach. 6 months supervising the opening of a new hotel. A $500,000 bonus if you can open on time and within budget." Robert processed the information. $350,000 a year was a huge step up. A $500,000 bonus would completely change his financial situation, but there was always a hidden cost. "What's the catch?" he asked directly. Gregory smiled. "Smart. The catch is you'd have to move to Myrtle Beach for 6 months. The hotel is too far for daily commutes. You'd need to live there, supervise the construction full-time. It's intense work, 7 days a week." "And my daughters?" "You'd take them, of course. And the nanny, too, if she agrees. I'll pay for a furnished apartment, all expenses. You just need to focus on the project." Robert thought of Isabel and Sophia. He thought of Mary. He thought of disrupting the stable life they had built in the tiny apartment in North Charleston. But he also thought of the $500,000 that would pay off debts, create a financial reserve, and provide real security. "Can I think about it until Monday?" "Of course, but Robert, this is a rare opportunity. I'm offering it to you because I trust your work. I don't do this often." Robert left the office with his head spinning. $350,000 a year. A $500,000 bonus. It was life-changing money. But would it change things for the better? At home, he found a scene that was now familiar and comforting. Mary on the living room floor playing with the twins, the three of them laughing at something only they understood. Isabel was banging wooden blocks together. Sophia was trying to fit a square peg into a round hole of an educational toy. Robert sat on the old sofa, watching. Mary noticed his arrival and smiled. "You're home early today." "I need to talk to you," he said. Mary picked up Sophia, while Isabel continued to play at her feet. "About what?" "I received a promotion offer." Robert explained the details. The raise, the project, the move to Myrtle Beach, the 6 months away from Charleston. Mary listened in silence. When he finished, she said, "And you want to accept?" "It makes financial sense," Robert replied. "A $500,000 bonus would pay off remaining debts, create an emergency fund. $350,000 a year would give the girls a better quality of life." "I didn't ask if it makes financial sense," Mary said gently. "I asked if you want to accept." Robert hesitated. "I don't know. Part of me wants to. Part of me is afraid it's a trap." Gregory doesn't do anything without calculating the return. If he's offering this much, it's because he expects to get more back. "Maybe he's just recognizing good work," Mary suggested. "Sometimes people do good things without ulterior motives." "Do you believe that?" Robert asked. "I need to believe that," Mary corrected. "Otherwise the world is too cold a place to live in." Isabel tugged on Robert's pants, wanting attention. He picked her up. She immediately grabbed his tie and tried to put it in her mouth. Robert laughed and gently moved her chubby hand away. "And you?" he asked Mary. "Would you?" "Come with me. To Myrtle Beach." Mary set Sophia on her feet, holding her little hands as the baby tried to take wobbly steps. "It depends," she said. "Why do you want me to go?" Robert opened his mouth to answer, then stopped. Why did he want her to? The obvious answer was because the twins needed her, but there was something more, something he was reluctant to admit even to himself. "Because the three of you are my family now," he said finally. "You, Isabel, Sophia. You're what matters. I don't want to make a big move without you." Mary stopped helping Sophia walk. She looked at Robert with an expression he couldn't decipher. "Your family," she repeated softly. "I know not in the legal or biological sense," Robert hurried to explain, "but in the real sense, the sense that counts. You take care of them better than their biological mother ever did. You taught me how to be a father. You keep everything running. So yes, family." Sophia lost her balance and fell onto the floor with a soft plop. She started to whimper, but Mary quickly picked her up, distracting her with exaggerated kisses on her belly that made the baby laugh. "I'll go," Mary said. "If you go, we'll go, but on one condition." "What is it?" "That you stop treating this like a business transaction. You pay me a salary, yes, but that's not why I stay. I stay because I like being here, because Isabel and Sophia are special to me, because watching you try to be a better man is inspiring. So if we go to Myrtle Beach, it will be as a real family, not as a boss and an employee. Understood?" Robert felt something stir in his chest, a strange and uncomfortable sensation. "Understood," he agreed. "Great," Mary said pragmatically. "Then you accept the promotion. We move, and we make it work, like we always do." That night, after the twins were asleep, Robert and Mary sat at the small kitchen table planning the details. What to take, what to leave, how to organize the move. They talked until almost midnight, their coffee growing cold in their cups, sharing cheap supermarket cookies. At some point, Mary commented on something funny about Sophia confusing her own foot with a toy. Robert laughed, a genuine laugh that echoed through the tiny kitchen. Mary laughed too, and her eyes met his for a moment that was too long to be casual. Robert looked away first, uncomfortable with what he felt in that moment. Attraction. It couldn't be. She worked for him. She took care of his daughters. She was an employee, not a romantic interest. But as he got ready for bed, Robert couldn't stop thinking about that moment, about her eyes, her smile, the sense of belonging he felt when they were together. On Monday, he walked into Gregory's office with his decision made. "I accept the promotion, I accept the project. When do we start?" Gregory smiled, satisfied. "July 1st. 2 weeks to get your things in order here. The apartment in Myrtle Beach is already ready. 3 bedrooms, furnished, 15 minutes from the construction site. You'll like it." Robert extended his hand. "I won't disappoint you." "I know," Gregory said, shaking his hand. "That's why I'm betting $500,000 on you." The 2 weeks passed in a flurry of preparations. Mary packed everything they owned, which wasn't much. Robert finalized pending matters at the Charleston hotels, gave instructions to the local managers, and ensured operational continuity. On their last night, in the North Charleston apartment, Robert lay awake staring at the cracked ceiling he had come to know over the past 3 months. It was here that he had rebuilt his life. It was here that he had learned to be a father. It was here that he had found something like redemption. Mary knocked softly on his bedroom door. "May I come in?" Of course. She entered wearing simple pajamas, her hair down. She sat on the edge of the bed. "Thinking?" "Always," Robert said, "about how quickly everything has changed. 3 months ago I was broke and desperate. Now I have a job, a promotion, a future. It feels unreal." "It's not unreal," Mary said. "It's the consequence of hard work and right choices." "Do you think I'm making the right choices?" Robert asked. "I think you're doing the best you can," Mary replied, "and that's a lot." She stood up to leave, but Robert gently held her by the wrist. "Thank you," he said, "for everything, for not abandoning me when it would have been so easy, for staying, for believing." Mary looked at his hand holding her wrist. "You don't have to thank me, Robert. I chose to stay, and I choose to keep staying." She left, leaving Robert alone with his confused thoughts and feelings he couldn't name. Outside, North Charleston slept under a starry sky, oblivious to the human dramas unfolding in tiny apartments and rebuilt hearts. The apartment in Myrtle Beach was on the 12th floor of a modern building on Ocean Boulevard. 3 bedrooms, a large living room, an equipped kitchen, and a balcony with a partial view of the sea. It was luxurious compared to what they had in North Charleston, but modest compared to what Robert had known at the height of his wealth. Mary chose the smallest room for herself, insisting that the twins needed the larger space to play. Robert didn't argue, having already learned that arguing with Mary about practical matters was a futile exercise. She was always right, or at least she always convinced him that she was. The construction site for the new hotel was in the South End area, a 5,000 square meter plot facing the sea. It was to be a high-end development, 20 floors, 200 apartments, a full spa and 3 restaurants. An $80 million investment with a completion deadline of 18 months. Robert had 6 months to finish the entire structure and begin the finishes. The engineer in charge was a 40-year-old man named Anthony Vance, with disheveled hair, an unshaven beard, and the tired eyes of someone who slept little. He greeted Robert with a firm handshake and a full tour of the site. "We're 3 weeks behind schedule," Anthony admitted bluntly. "The foundation had problems. The soil was more unstable than the survey indicated. We had to reinforce it with extra piles. That added 2 weeks. Then it rained for 7 days straight and we lost more time." Robert examined the progress charts. A 3-week delay on a 6-month project was a significant percentage. Recoverable, but it would require maximum efficiency from then on. "How many crews are working?" he asked. 2. A day shift and an afternoon shift. "Why not 3? A night shift with proper lighting would speed things up." Anthony sighed, because Gregory didn't approve the budget for a night shift, said it would increase costs by 15%. Robert took out his phone and called Gregory in front of Anthony. He put it on speaker. "Robert," Gregory answered. "Did you arrive safely?" "I did. I'm at the site. We need to talk about adding a night shift. We've already discussed this. It increases costs too much." Robert took a deep breath. "Gregory, we're 3 weeks behind. If we don't catch up now, we'll miss the deadline. Every month of delay in delivery means millions in lost sales. Spending 15% more now to deliver on time makes financial sense." Silence on the other end. Then Gregory said, "How much time would the night shift save?" 4 weeks, Robert replied, looking at Anthony, who nodded in confirmation. "We'd deliver a week ahead of schedule instead of 2 weeks. Late. A 3-week difference that's worth millions." More silence. "Approved," Gregory said finally. "But if you go over budget beyond the 15%, it comes out of your bonus. Understood?" "Understood," Robert agreed and hung up. Anthony looked at him with admiration. "He's always been stubborn with budgets. How did you convince him?" "I spoke the language he understands, profit and loss." Robert put his phone away. "I want the night shift running by Monday." The following days were intense. Robert spent 12 hours at the site, supervising every detail, solving problems, and making quick decisions. He would get home at 9 at night, exhausted, covered in construction dust, barely able to keep his eyes open. Mary always waited for him with dinner ready and the twins' bath prepared. She managed the routine alone with impressive efficiency, adapting to the new apartment, finding a local pediatrician, and locating a safe playground to take the girls. Isabel and Sophia were growing visibly. At 11 months old now, they were trying to say single words. Isabel would say Dada when she saw Robert. Sophia would say Mama when she wanted Mary. Small developmental milestones that filled Robert's heart with a strange sensation, a mixture of pride and inadequacy. He was missing many of these moments because of work. Mary documented everything, taking photos and short videos that she sent to Robert during the day. Isabel's first step, Sophia eating by herself for the first time, the two of them playing together without fighting over a toy. On a Thursday in July, Robert came home earlier than usual, just 6 in the evening. He found Mary on the balcony, the twins asleep in the living room, while she watched the sunset over the distant sea. "May I join you?" he asked. "Of course," Mary said without taking her eyes off the horizon. Robert sat in the chair next to her. The air was fresh, the smell of the sea mixed with the aroma of the dinner Mary had prepared. Below, Ocean Boulevard was bustling with nightlife, tourists and residents mixed in an urban dance. "Are you happy here?" Robert asked suddenly. Mary looked at him surprised. "Happy? Yes. In Myrtle Beach, in this apartment, in this life. Are you happy?" She thought before answering. "I'm content," she said. "Happy is too big a word, too absolute. But I'm content. The girls are... Well, you're working on something that matters. We have a roof over our heads, food, security. It's more than many people have." "But what about you?" Robert insisted. "Not the girls, not me. You, Mary. What makes you happy?" Mary smiled, but there was sadness in the gesture. "No one has asked me that in a long time," she admitted. "Since Richard passed, my life has been about survival, working, paying bills, existing. Happiness seemed like a luxury I couldn't afford to seek." "Richard was your husband," Robert said. It wasn't a question. "He was," Mary confirmed. "He died 3 years ago in a construction accident. He was working without proper safety equipment because the company was cutting corners on PPE. A loose beam. He didn't even have time to move." "I'm sorry," Robert said inadequately, the same words everyone says, but that never help. "I was sorry for a long time, too," Mary continued. "Angry, actually. Angry at the company that didn't spend $15 on a proper helmet. Angry at the supervisor who allowed unsafe work. Angry at Richard for accepting bad conditions because we needed the money. But anger just ate me up inside. It didn't bring him back, it didn't pay the bills." "So you decided to move on," Robert said. "I decided to survive first," Mary corrected. "Moving on came later, very slowly. And there are still days when I feel like I'm just existing, not really living. But there are good moments too. Watching Isabel and Sophia grow. Managing to make you laugh after a hard day. Small moments that make survival worthwhile." Robert looked at her, really looked. Mary was 28, but sometimes she seemed to carry the weight of extra decades. Loss leaves an invisible but permanent mark. He recognized it because he saw the same mark in his own mirror. "You deserve to be happy," he said. "Not just content, truly happy." Mary laughed softly. "Everyone deserves it, but not everyone gets it. And that's okay. We do the best we can with what we have." A comfortable silence settled between them. They watched the sun disappear completely, giving way to the city lights. Inside, Isabel whimpered in her sleep. Mary stood up automatically, but Robert gently held her arm. "I'll go," he said. "You've done everything today. Rest." He went inside and found Isabel stirring in the crib. He picked the baby up, murmuring nonsensical words that seemed to calm her. Isabel rested her little head on his shoulder and fell back asleep in seconds. Robert stood there holding his daughter, rocking her gently, feeling the small but significant weight against his chest. It was in those moments that he understood what Mary meant about small moments making survival worthwhile. July turned into August. The project was progressing well, gradually making up for the delay. Robert implemented a system of short daily meetings, 15 minutes every morning with team leaders, identifying problems before they became crises. Anthony praised his efficiency, saying he had never worked with a director so present and accessible. On a Friday, Robert received an unexpected call, a number from Charleston he didn't recognize. "Hello?" "Robert Ashford," a female voice, mature, formal. "Yes, who is this?" "Dr. Sylvia Matos, attorney. I represent Vanessa Ashford, your wife." Robert felt his stomach churn. Vanessa. After 7 months of absolute silence, she was reappearing through a lawyer. "What does she want?" he asked coldly. "She would like to meet with you in person. There are legal matters to resolve." "A divorce," Robert said. "She wants a divorce." Among other things, Dr. Matos hesitated. "Would it be possible to meet on Monday, at my office in Charleston?" Robert thought about refusing, about saying he was too busy, that Vanessa didn't even deserve 5 minutes of his time. But there were practical issues. Custody of the twins, division of non-existent assets, the legal finalization of a marriage that had emotionally ended months ago. Monday, 11 o'clock, he agreed. Send me the address. He hung up and stared at the phone as if it were a venomous snake. Vanessa. The woman who had fled, leaving 2-month-old babies without a mother. The woman who had taken jewelry but not her daughters. The woman who had disappeared without explanation and was now returning through an expensive lawyer to resolve legal issues. Robert didn't know what he felt. Anger, certainly. But also a morbid curiosity. Where had she been? Why had she left? And more importantly, why was she coming back now? Mary found him sitting on the balcony an hour later, still processing the call. She didn't ask anything, just sat beside him and waited. Her ability to give space while offering silent presence was one of the things Robert appreciated most. Vanessa wants to meet, he said eventually. Monday in Charleston. Mary nodded. Are you going? I have to. There are legal issues to resolve. A divorce, probably. How are you feeling? Robert laughed humorlessly. I don't know. Confused, angry, relieved maybe. Part of me wants answers. Another part doesn't want to give her the satisfaction of knowing I care enough to ask. You're entitled to answers, Mary said gently, and you're entitled to be angry. But don't let it consume you, Robert. She's not worth it. Robert looked at Mary. The soft light from the balcony made her features more delicate, more vulnerable. There was genuine concern in her eyes, a care that went beyond professional obligation. Will you come with me? He asked impulsively. To Charleston? Mary blinked in surprise. You want me to go? I do. Robert held her hand, a gesture that felt too natural to question. I don't want to face this alone, and you're my family now, remember? Family doesn't abandon family. Mary squeezed his hand back. Then I'll go. The girls too? Can we leave them with someone we trust here? It will only be for a day. Mary thought for a moment. There's a neighbor on the 8th floor, Mrs. Amelia. I met her in the laundry room. She has grandchildren the same age as the girls and offered to help if we ever needed it. I can ask her. Perfect, Robert said. And Mary, thank you. For everything, always. Mary smiled and squeezed his hand one more time before letting go. Always, she repeated, a word that sounded like a promise. Monday dawned with an overcast sky, threatening rain. Robert wore a grey suit he used for important meetings, adjusting his tie 3 times before getting the knot perfect. His hands were trembling slightly, a symptom of nervousness he tried to hide but couldn't completely control. Mary wore a simple navy blue dress, her hair in an elegant bun, light makeup that highlighted her eyes. She looked beautiful in an understated way, Robert noticed, and immediately felt guilty for noticing. Today was not a day for those thoughts. Mrs. Amelia arrived at 8 in the morning, a 60-year-old woman with a warm smile and contagious energy. Isabel and Sophia adored her instantly, which reassured Mary. She left detailed instructions, emergency numbers, prepared bottles, everything organized with military precision. The bus ride from Myrtle Beach to Charleston took 2 hours. Robert and Mary sat side by side, she at the window watching the landscape pass by, he mentally rehearsing what he would say when he saw Vanessa. But the words wouldn't come. How could he summarize 7 months of abandonment, betrayal and pain in a polite conversation in a law office? You don't need to have all the answers right now, Mary said softly, as if reading his thoughts. Just listen to what she has to say. Then decide how you feel and what you want to do. And what if I want to scream? Robert asked. What if I want to ask her how she sleeps at night, knowing she abandoned 2 helpless babies? Then ask, Mary replied. You have that right. But after you've vented, remember that you don't need her anymore. The girls don't need her. You've already built a life without her. This meeting is just a legal formality, not a resumption of a relationship. Robert nodded, absorbing her calm wisdom. Dr. Sylvia Martos's office was in downtown Charleston, on the 10th floor of a corporate building. A spacious room, sober decor, the smell of freshly brewed coffee. The secretary greeted them, cordially, and asked them to wait. 10 minutes later, an inner door opened. Vanessa Ashford entered first, followed by her lawyer. Robert stood up automatically, his hands clenching into fists involuntarily. Mary remained seated but lightly touched his arm, a silent anchor. Vanessa looked different, thinner, her hair shorter, expensive clothes that Robert recognized as European brands. She wore sunglasses inside the office, hiding the eyes Robert had once known intimately, but were now strange. "Robert," she said. Her voice was the same, that soft tone he had once found charming and now only irritated him. "Vanessa," he replied neutrally. She looked at Mary with poorly disguised curiosity. "And you are?" "Mary Evans," Mary answered politely but firmly. "Your daughter's caregiver." Something flickered across Vanessa's face, an expression too quick for Robert to decipher. The lawyer intervened, indicating chairs around the meeting table. "Please have a seat. Let's keep this brief and professional." Everyone sat down. Dr. Matos opened a folder and distributed documents. "My client wishes to formalize the divorce and completely renounce her maternal rights over Isabel and Sophia Ashford. She will not seek custody, visitation, or any involvement in the children's lives. In return, she also renounces any claim to Mr. Ashford's assets, debts, or future earnings." Robert read the documents, the words blurring on the page. "Renounce her maternal rights." As if daughters were business contracts that could be cancelled with a signature and a stamp. "Why?" he asked, looking directly at Vanessa. "Why abandon your own daughters?" Vanessa finally took off her sunglasses. Her eyes were red, swollen, but dry. "Because I never wanted to be a mother," she said with brutal honesty. "You wanted children. You insisted. You said you would be a present father, that I would barely have to change my routine. But when they were born, I realized I had made a terrible mistake. Every cry, every diaper, every sleepless night, I felt like I was trapped in a life I didn't choose." "But you did choose," Robert said, his voice trembling with contained anger. "You chose to get pregnant. You chose to have the twins. No one forced you." "You're right," Vanessa admitted. "I chose wrong. And by the time I realized it, it was too late. They had been born. 2 lives depending on me. And I would look at them and feel nothing I was supposed to feel. Love, connection, maternal instinct. But all I felt was emptiness and resentment." Mary shifted beside Robert but said nothing. Her presence was enough. "So you ran," Robert said. "You took jewelry, money, your passport. You left a 3-line note, and you disappeared for 7 months without a phone call, a message, any sign of life." "I went to Spain," Vanessa said. "Madrid. I met someone there. A businessman, wealthy, kind. He offered me a different life, a life without the responsibilities I couldn't bear. And I accepted because I was too cowardly to stay and try to be the mother. I couldn't be." "At least you admit your cowardice," Robert said bitterly. "I admit everything," Vanessa replied. "I'm selfish, cowardly, a bad mother, but signing these papers is the only decent thing I can do. To free you and the girls from me, to allow you to build a life without the ghost of an absent mother. They deserve better than me. You deserve better than me." Robert looked at the documents again. Part of him wanted to tear them up, to refuse, to force Vanessa to take on the responsibilities she was rejecting. But another part, the part that had grown in the last 7 months, understood that forcing someone to be a parent against their will was cruel to everyone involved. "Are they okay?" Vanessa asked hesitantly. "The girls?" "They're great," Mary answered before Robert could. "Isabel is almost walking on her own. Sophia can say 5 words. They eat well, sleep well, they're happy and healthy babies. They are being loved and properly cared for." Vanessa nodded, visible relief on her face. "That's good. I'm glad they have someone who loves them the way I should but can't." Robert picked up the pen. He signed every page of the documents, every line that officially dissolved a 7-year marriage and formalized maternal abandonment. When he finished, he pushed the papers back to the lawyer. "Done. You're free. Can we go now?" Dr. Matos collected the documents. "There's one more thing. My client would like to establish a trust fund for the girls. $50,000, locked until they turn 18. It's not compensation, but it's something." "We don't want her money," Robert said immediately, but Mary placed a hand on his arm. Robert, think about the girls. It's money for their future education, for college, for opportunities. You don't have to forgive her to accept it. Robert looked at Mary, then at Vanessa. $50,000. It would give the twins opportunities he might not be able to provide on his own. Fine, he agreed reluctantly, but in a locked fund that only they can access as adults. No clause that gives you the right to come back or interfere. It's already stipulated that way, the lawyer assured him. Vanessa stood up. Robert, she said, I know it doesn't change anything, but I'm sorry. For everything, for not being strong enough, for abandoning you, for being exactly the kind of person I've always despised. Robert stood up too. I'm sorry too, Vanessa. I'm sorry that our daughters will never know their mother. I'm sorry that you'll never experience their unconditional love. I'm sorry that you chose to run instead of fight. But most of all, I'm sorry that I no longer need your regret or your apologies. You are dismissed from our lives. Officially. Vanessa put her sunglasses back on. Take good care of them, she said, her voice failing for the first time. And find someone who loves them as they deserve, someone better than me. She left without looking back. The lawyer finalized some signatures and promised to send certified copies in 2 days. Robert and Mary left the office in silence, took the elevator, and stepped out onto the street, where a light drizzle was beginning to fall. Robert walked without any specific direction, Mary beside him, respecting his silence. After 3 blocks, he stopped in front of a small square, its benches empty under leafy trees. He sat down heavily, and Mary joined him. Are you okay? She asked. I don't know, Robert admitted. I should be relieved. I should be happy that she finally took responsibility by signing the papers and leaving our lives. But all I feel is anger. Anger that she so easily admits she doesn't want us. Anger that she's found a new life while I'm rebuilding the wreckage of my old one. Anger that Isabel and Sophia will never have the chance to know their biological mother. Mary took his hand. It's valid to feel angry, but don't let it ruin what you've built. You're an incredible father, Robert. You've improved so much in the last few months. You learn fast, you love deeply, you always try. The girls are lucky to have you. And you, Robert said, looking at her. They're lucky to have you. You've been more of a mother to them in 7 months than Vanessa was in 2. You're the one they call for when they're scared. You're the one who knows their favorite songs, the foods they like, the right way to rock each of them. You're their mother in every way that matters. Mary blushed, looking away. I just do my job. No, Robert insisted. You do much more than a job. You saved us, me and the girls. You showed up when no one else would. You stayed when everyone else fled. You taught me how to be a father. You taught me how to be a better man. How do I properly thank you for that? Mary looked at him, her eyes shining. Don't thank me, Robert, because I didn't do it out of obligation or expecting gratitude. I did it because I wanted to. Because the 3 of you matter to me more than I can explain. Something shifted in the air between them, a tension that had been building for months. Unspoken feelings pulsating beneath the surface. Robert was holding Mary's hand, she was holding his back, and neither of them let go. Mary, he began, his voice hoarse, I need to tell you something. Something I've been feeling for a while but was afraid to admit. Mary held her breath. What? But before Robert could continue, her phone rang. She looked at the screen and turned pale. It's Mrs. Amelia. It's about the girls. She answered quickly, putting it on speaker. Mrs. Amelia, is everything okay? Mary, dear, the lady's voice was calm but worried. Sophia has a fever. It started about 20 minutes ago. It's already at 101.3. It doesn't seem serious, but I thought I should let you know. We're on our way back now, Mary said. Keep her cool, plenty of fluids. We'll be there in 2 hours. She hung up and looked at Robert. We need to go. Of course, Robert agreed, the moment between them broken but not forgotten. Let's go home. The journey back was agonizing. Mary called Mrs. Amelia 3 times in 2 hours, checking Sophia's temperature, listening to reassuring reports, but worried nonetheless. Robert held her hand the entire way, offering the silent comfort that was all he could give. When they arrived at the apartment, it was almost 6 in the evening. Mrs. Amelia opened the door with Sophia in her arms, the baby clearly uncomfortable, but not crying. Isabel was playing on the rug, happily oblivious to the tension. "She's better," Mrs. Amelia informed them. "The fever went down to 99.5 half an hour ago. I gave her the fever reducer you left. I think it's just teething. She was drooling a lot all afternoon." Mary took Sophia, felt her forehead, and examined her with the care of an experienced mother. "It really does seem like teething. Thank you for taking such good care of them, Mrs. Amelia." "Oh, it was my pleasure, dear." The lady picked up her purse. "If you need anything, just call me. I live right downstairs." After she left, Mary settled on the sofa with Sophia, rocking her gently. Robert picked up Isabel, who immediately tried to pull the glasses off his face. The two twins, two exhausted caregivers, a quiet apartment except for the comforting sounds of children. "You were so scared," Robert commented softly. "On the bus. You were terrified." Mary looked at Sophia, stroking her soft curls. "When you love someone, fear comes with it," she said. "Fear of losing them, fear of not being enough, fear of failing when it matters most. And I love these girls, Robert. I truly love them, with all the strength I have." "I know," Robert said. "I see it every day, in the way you care for them, in the way you worry, in the way you know every detail of their lives. You love them as a mother loves, not as a hired nanny, but as a real mother." Mary didn't answer, but silent tears began to stream down her face. Robert grew concerned. "Mary, what's wrong?" She shook her head, trying to compose herself. "I'm sorry, it's just that no one has ever validated that before. Every time someone asks about them, I say I'm the nanny, an employee, a professional caregiver. Because I'm afraid that if I say I love them like my own daughters, they'll think I'm overstepping, that I'm being inappropriate, that I'm trying to steal their biological mother's place." "Vanessa gave up that place," Robert said firmly. "She signed it away herself today. And you're not stealing anything, Mary. You're filling a void that would exist without you. You're being the mother the girls need and deserve." Mary wiped her tears with one hand, the other still rocking Sophia. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for saying that." That night, after the twins were asleep, Robert and Mary sat on the balcony as had become their custom. The air was cool, the city lights below like a terrestrial constellation. Mary brought hot tea. Robert brought a blanket they shared when the temperature dropped. "Today at the office," Robert began. "Before the phone rang, I was going to tell you something." Mary looked at him over her teacup. "I remember." Robert took a deep breath. "It's not easy to say this, not after everything that's happened, not with the history I have. But I have to be honest because you deserve honesty." "You can say it," Mary encouraged gently. "I'm falling in love with you," Robert said, the words tumbling out in a rush. "Or maybe I've already fallen, and I'm just now admitting it. I don't know when it started exactly. Maybe when you showed up at my office with formula for my daughters when no one else cared. Maybe when you insisted on coming with us to Myrtle Beach. Maybe it was gradual, building up in small moments I didn't notice, until it became a feeling too big to ignore." He continued before his courage failed. "I know this complicates everything. I know you work for me, that there's a power imbalance, that it might seem like I'm taking advantage. But I swear that's not it. I swear I see you as an equal, as a partner, as the most important person in my life besides the girls. And if you don't feel the same, I completely understand. We can pretend I never said anything, and go on as we were." Mary placed her teacup on the side table. She was silent for what felt like an eternity. Robert felt panic rising. He had ruined everything. He had crossed a line he shouldn't have. He had lost the only person who mattered. Then Mary spoke, her voice low but firm. "I feel the same." Robert blinked. "What?" "I feel the same," she repeated. "For months, but I was so afraid to admit it, afraid that people would think I'm being opportunistic. The poor widow who falls for her rich boss to secure her financial future. Everyone would think that." "I'm not rich," Robert pointed out. "I earn a salary and work hard. There's nothing opportunistic about caring for someone who works just as hard as you do." But you were rich, Mary said, and you could be again. Gregory offered you a $500,000 bonus. You have a bright future ahead of you, and I'm just a nanny with no formal education, no important family, nothing to offer but love and hard work. Robert turned completely towards her, taking both her hands. Mary Evans, are you listening to me? You saved my life. You saved my daughters' lives. You taught me humility, empathy, unconditional love. You showed me that real wealth isn't in a bank account, but in the people who choose to stay when things get tough. You offer everything that matters, everything I could never buy with millions. Tears returned to Mary's eyes, but the smile that accompanied them was genuine, radiant. So, what do we do now? She asked. Robert smiled too. I don't know. I've never been in this situation before. My marriage to Vanessa was a social transaction from the beginning. Important families, business alliances, the right appearances. It was never about real love. But this, what I feel for you, is so different I don't even know how to navigate it. How about we start slow? Mary suggested. We don't change anything drastically. We just allow the feelings to exist. See where they take us. No pressure, no impossible expectations. That sounds sensible, Robert agreed. And honest too. Do we need to tell the girls? Mary laughed. They're 11 months old, Robert. I think we can wait until they understand the concept of adult relationships. Fair enough, Robert laughed too. So we keep this between us for now. Our secret. Our beginning, Mary corrected. Not a secret. A beginning. They stayed on the balcony late, talking about everything and nothing. Their childhoods, dreams, regrets, hopes. Robert told her about the pressure of following his father's legacy, about how business success had consumed him until it turned him into a person he despised. Mary told him about meeting Richard at 19, marrying at 20, planning a family they never had the chance to build. It was therapeutic, cathartic, necessary. When they finally went inside, it was 2 a.m. Robert kissed Mary's forehead at her bedroom door, a simple gesture, but laden with promise. Good night, he said. Good night, Robert, she replied, smiling. September brought significant progress on the project. The hotel's structure was complete, all 20 floors erected, windows installed, the electrical system running. All that was left were the finishes, decoration, and furniture. Detailed work that required constant attention but was less stressful than the foundation and main structure. Robert celebrated the milestone with a barbecue at the construction site, inviting all the teams. Anthony gave an emotional speech thanking his leadership, and Gregory appeared in person to congratulate them on the progress. They were now a week ahead of schedule, not behind. At home, Robert and Mary navigated the new territory of their relationship with care. They didn't hide their affection from the twins, who were too young to understand but clearly noticed a change. Robert would kiss Mary's forehead in the morning. Mary would hold his hand while they watched television, small gestures that gradually built intimacy. One October evening, after the girls were asleep, Robert found Mary crying softly in the kitchen. He entered, alarmed, and hugged her from behind. What happened? It's been 4 years today, she said between sobs. 4 years since Richard passed. And I was so happy today, so content with our life that I almost forgot. And when I remembered, I felt this terrible guilt. How can I be happy when he's not here? How can I fall in love with someone else when I promised to love him forever? Robert turned her to face him, wiping her tears with his thumbs. Mary, look at me. Richard wouldn't want you to be alone forever. He wouldn't want you to freeze your life in eternal mourning. He loved you, and people who truly love want happiness for those they love, even when they're no longer here to share it. But it feels like a betrayal, Mary confessed. It feels like I'm replacing him. You're not replacing anyone, Robert said firmly. Love isn't finite. You can love Richard's memory and still have room to love someone else. One doesn't cancel out the other. And I'm not competing with his ghost. I'm just trying to be a good enough man to deserve a chance with you. Mary clung to him, crying on his shoulder. Robert just held her, letting her process the pain and guilt and complicated love that humans carry. When the sobs finally subsided, she looked up with red but grateful eyes. Thank you, she said, for understanding, for not rushing me, for being patient. Always, Robert promised. We have all the time in the world. But the next morning, Robert's phone rang with news that would change everything again. It was Gregory, his voice urgent and excited. "Robert, turn on the TV, the news channel, now!" Robert grabbed the remote, switched to the news channel as Mary joined him on the sofa. The headline scrolled across the bottom of the screen. "American businessman arrested in Panama for international fraud." And there, handcuffed between Panamanian police officers, was Paul Miller, his former partner, the man who had stolen $18 million and destroyed everything. The anchor narrated, Paul Miller, 45, had been a fugitive for 8 months after a fraudulent scheme that harmed dozens of investors. U.S. authorities have requested his extradition. Miller has confessed to the crimes in exchange for a reduced sentence. Robert couldn't take his eyes off the screen. Paul, arrested. Paul, confessing. After 8 months on the run, finally captured. The phone rang again. It was Gregory. "Robert, this changes everything. If he confesses to the full extent of the fraud, your name is cleared. Completely. All the lawsuits, all the charges, everything is dropped. You can go back to being who you were before." But Robert looked at Mary, at the modest apartment, at the photo of the twins on the shelf. He looked at the life he had built over the past 9 months, a simple but honest life, a life with purpose and genuine love. "I don't want to go back to being who I was before," he said into the phone, his eyes still on Mary. "That person was miserable. I prefer to be who I'm becoming." The following weeks were a whirlwind of legal and personal developments. Paul Miller, in Panamanian custody, confessed to the entire fraud in exchange for a plea deal. He named accomplices, revealed secret accounts, and handed over falsified documentation. The scheme was larger than Robert had imagined, involving embezzlement from multiple companies and international investors. Lawyers from the IRS called Robert directly. All charges against him would be dropped, all lawsuits dismissed, his name completely cleared. More than that, $42 million were recovered from offshore accounts, money that legally belonged to him as the wronged partner. $42 million. It was a significant fortune, capable of rebuilding an empire, buying back hotels, resuming the life of luxury he had known. Robert could have it all back if he wanted. But when he sat down with Mary that night, explaining everything, he already knew he didn't want to go back. $42 million, Mary repeated, stunned. "Robert, that's a lifetime of money. Several lifetimes. What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet," he admitted. "Part of me wants to invest in business again. But I'm afraid of becoming who I was. The money corrupted me. Before. How do I ensure it won't corrupt me again?" Mary took his hand. "Because you're not that person anymore. Because you lived without money and learned what truly matters. Because you have 2 daughters who need to see a father with solid values, not a father obsessed with profit." She hesitated, then continued. "And because you have me now. To remind you. To keep you grounded. To scold you when your inflated ego starts to show." Robert laughed. "You'd scold me?" "Without a doubt," Mary said seriously. "If I see you falling back into old patterns, treating people badly, prioritizing money over humanity, I will confront you immediately. I won't let you become that man again." "Promise?" Robert asked. "I promise," she replied firmly. The hotel project was completed 3 days ahead of schedule. Gregory was so impressed that he increased the bonus from $500,000 to $600,000. At the opening ceremony, local politicians, investors, and the press attended. Robert gave a short speech thanking the teams, especially Anthony and the workers who had sweated under the sun and rain for 6 months. After the ceremony, Gregory called Robert for a private conversation. They walked along the empty beach, the November afternoon windy but pleasant. "You got the money," Gregory said bluntly. $42 million. I know you've thought about getting back into the hotel business. I know you could buy back your properties if you wanted." Robert waited, knowing there was more. "I want to make you a proposal," Gregory continued. "A partnership. 51% for me, 49% for you. We invest $50 million together, expand to 6 new hotels. You'll be the senior director of operations with a salary of $500,000 a year plus profit sharing. In 5 years, your share will probably be worth $100 million. It was a generous offer, extremely generous. Gregory was offering an equal partnership, recognition of his abilities, a direct path back to the top. It's tempting, Robert said honestly. Very tempting, but I need to consult the important people in my life. Your nanny? Gregory asked with a half smile. My girlfriend, Robert corrected. And yes, I need to consult her, and my daughters too, in a way. Any decision I make now affects them. I can't just decide on my own thinking only about profit anymore. Gregory nodded respectfully. You've changed, Robert. Really changed. The man I met a year ago would have accepted without hesitation, without consulting anyone. This man thinks of his family first. It's admirable. Or it's a weakness, Robert said. No, Gregory disagreed. It's strength. Real strength, not the false kind we confuse with arrogance. Give me an answer by the end of the week. That night, Robert took Mary to dinner at a restaurant overlooking the sea. It was the first time they had officially gone out as a couple, without the twins, just the two of them. Mrs. Amelia happily watched the girls, saying they deserved a romantic night out. Mary wore a green dress Robert had never seen before, her hair down in natural waves, delicate makeup. She was beautiful in a way that took his breath away. Robert wore a navy blue suit, no tie, more relaxed than he used to dress in his previous life. They sat at a table on the restaurant's terrace, the sound of waves breaking in the background, candles creating an intimate atmosphere. They ordered wine, seafood, and talked about everything except the difficult decisions they had to make. But when dessert arrived, Robert finally broached the subject. Gregory offered me a partnership, a $50 million investment, 49% stake, triple my current salary. Mary put her fork down. And you want to accept? Part of me does, Robert admitted. It's a rare opportunity, a chance to rebuild everything I lost, but the right way this time, with an honest partner, with the experience I've gained, with the values I've learned. And the other part? Mary asked. The other part wants to do something different. Robert took her hand across the table. Something that really matters, not just building hotels and making a profit, but creating a real impact in people's lives. How? Robert took a deep breath. I was thinking of an educational foundation, using the $42 million to create a school for children from underprivileged communities. Not just teaching academic subjects, but ethical values, social responsibility, empathy. Things I should have learned, but only learned after losing everything. Mary's eyes lit up. Robert, that's beautiful. It's perfect. But it means giving up wealth, he pointed out. It means choosing purpose over profit. It means working hard for a modest salary instead of building a new empire. Are you prepared for that? Mary squeezed his hand. I'm prepared for anything as long as we're together. And honestly, I'd rather have you dedicated to educating children than obsessed with building hotels. I'd rather have a father my daughters can admire for making a difference in the world. Our daughters, Robert corrected gently. Isabel and Sophia are ours, Mary, not just mine. Tears filled her eyes. Our daughters, she repeated, testing the words. That sounds nice. It sounds perfect, Robert agreed. He got up from the table, kneeling beside her chair. Mary gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. Robert pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. Mary Evans, he began, his voice firm despite his racing heart. You came into my life when everything was falling apart. You could have run away like everyone else did. But you stayed. You fed my daughters when I couldn't. You taught me how to be a father. You showed me that a man is not defined by his bank account, but by the choices he makes every day. He opened the box, revealing a simple silver ring with a small solitaire diamond. It wasn't ostentatious. It didn't cost a fortune. It was bought with the honest money he had, earned working hard. I want to spend the rest of my life with you, he continued. I want to build an educational foundation together. I want to raise our daughters together. I want to grow old with you, facing challenges together, celebrating victories together. Will you marry me, Mary? Mary was crying openly now, smiling through her tears. Yes, she said. Yes, 1,000 times yes. Robert placed the ring on her finger, stood up, and pulled her into an embrace. Other restaurant patrons applauded, some crying along with them. A private moment made public, but neither Robert nor Mary sang-haired. They returned home floating on air. They found Isabel and Sophia sleeping peacefully, Mrs. Amelia dozing on the sofa. They thanked her effusively. She congratulated them emotionally upon seeing the ring and promised to keep their secret until they announced it officially. Finally alone, Robert and Mary sat on the floor of the twins' room, watching the girls sleep. Isabel was snoring lightly. Sophia was hugging a teddy bear. "We're going to be a real family," Mary whispered in awe. "We already are," Robert replied. "Marriage just makes official what we already live every day." He thought about everything. That had happened in the last 10 months. The brutal fall, the sudden poverty, the absolute despair, but also the gradual redemption, the lessons learned, the love found. Losing 50 million had destroyed him financially, but had saved him as a human being. On Monday, Robert walked into Gregory's office with his decision made. "I deeply appreciate the offer. It's generous and tempting, but I have to decline." Gregory took off his glasses, calmly cleaning the lenses. "May I ask why?" "Because I want to do something different with my life," Robert explained. "I want to create an educational foundation, use the recovered money to give opportunities to children who don't have them, teach not just subjects but values, make a real difference." Gregory smiled. "I knew you'd say that." Robert blinked. "You knew?" "I hoped, at least," Gregory corrected. "Because I've known 2 Robert Ashfords. The first was ambitious, competent, but morally empty. He built wealth without thinking about the human cost. The second Robert, the one who has worked for me for the last 10 months, is different. He thinks about people, he prioritizes purpose, he chooses meaning over money." He leaned back in his chair. "Your foundation will need help. Administrative expertise, legal consulting, occasional financial support. I can offer all of that. Not as a business partner, but as a friend investing in a noble cause." "A friend?" Robert repeated, surprised. "You've impressed me, Robert," Gregory said sincerely. "Not many people have the courage to truly change, to give up wealth for principles. You have that courage. So yes, I'd like to be your friend, and I'd like to support your foundation in any way I can." Robert extended his hand, moved. "Thank you for everything. For the chance you gave me, for your patience, for believing." Gregory shook his hand firmly. "You saved yourself, Robert. I just provided the ladder. You climbed it on your own." Robert left the office with a feeling of complete freedom. No more predatory contracts, no more 5-year servitude, free to build the future he chose. He called Mary from the parking lot. "I turned down the partnership." "And?" she asked anxiously. "And we're going to create a foundation, together, you and me." Mary screamed with joy so loudly that Robert had to pull the phone away from his ear. When she calmed down, he continued, "There's one more thing. Gregory offered his help, consulting, support, expertise, and he called me his friend." "That's wonderful, Robert," Mary said. "Everything is falling into place perfectly." "There's still one thing left," Robert said. "I need to make peace with my past before I can build the future. I need to find those 43 employees I fired. I need to truly apologize. I need to try to compensate in some small way for the harm I caused." Mary was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "That's going to be hard, emotionally draining, but it's the right thing to do. And I'll be by your side for every conversation." Robert smiled. "I know you will. That's why I love you." "I love you too," she replied. "Now come home. Our daughters are waking up from their nap and they'll want to see their daddy." Locating 43 people fired almost 3 years ago was a more difficult task than Robert anticipated. Some had moved to different cities, others had changed their phone numbers. 3 simply did not want to be found, refusing contact as soon as they heard his name. But Robert persisted. He hired a private investigator to help with the search. He created a detailed spreadsheet with names, last known information, and location status. Mary helped every night, calling numbers, leaving messages, and tracking down leads. It took 2 months to find them all. When they did, Robert organized a meeting in a rented hotel ballroom in downtown Charleston. He sent formal invitations, explaining the purpose of the meeting, offering travel and accommodation for those who needed to travel. He expected maybe 20 to show up. 40 came. It was December, summer in full swing, with high temperatures and suffocating humidity. The ballroom had powerful air conditioning, coffee and snacks were provided, and chairs were arranged in a semicircle. Robert arrived half an hour early, more nervous than he had ever been in his previous corporate life. Mary was by his side, in a simple but elegant dress, her hand holding his firmly. "You can do this," she whispered. "Just be honest. Be human." The former employees began to arrive, some alone, others accompanied by spouses. There was mutual recognition, hugs between old colleagues who hadn't seen each other in years, lively conversations about where life had taken each of them. When everyone was seated, a silence fell over the room. 40. Pairs of eyes fixed on Robert, some curious, some hostile, others just weary. Robert stood up, he took a deep breath, he began. "Thank you for coming. I know that for many of you being here is difficult. Seeing my face probably brings back bad memories. I completely understand if some of you want to leave now, I won't judge." No one moved. Robert continued. "You were fired in December of 2022. 43 people losing their jobs 3 days before Christmas because I, Robert Ashford, decided I needed to save $40,000 to buy an unnecessary yacht. It wasn't because of a financial crisis. It wasn't because of necessary restructuring. It was because of pure and simple greed." He paused, letting the words sink in. "I saw a spreadsheet with your names. I studied every line, every identification number. To me, you were just data, costs to be cut. But for you, it was real life. Salaries that paid rent, health plans that covered families, security that vanished overnight." Charles Reed was sitting in the front row, arms crossed, his face a mask. Robert looked at him directly. "Mr. Reed, your daughter Laura had leukemia. She was in treatment. When I fired you, you lost your health insurance. You had to sell your car to pay for her medicine. That is a direct consequence of my selfish decision." Charles didn't respond, but Robert saw a muscle work in his jaw. Amanda Gibson was present, representing her late father. Robert found her in the third row. "Amanda, your father, Frank Gibson, worked for 6 years managing events. He was an excellent professional. When I fired him, he spent months looking for a job. No one wanted to hire a 54-year-old man. He became an app-based delivery driver. He worked until his heart gave out. I killed your father, even if indirectly." Amanda wiped away a silent tear but held his gaze. Robert continued, going through names, acknowledging specific stories when he knew them. Each person fired was not a number, but an affected life. Some had managed to recover quickly. Others took years. 3 were still unemployed, struggling to survive. "I've spent the last 10 months rebuilding my own life after losing everything," Robert said. "And I've learned a lesson I should have learned decades ago. People matter more than profit. Dignity matters more than money. Humanity matters more than quarterly balance sheets." He pulled up a chair and sat, putting himself on the same level as his former employees instead of above them. "I can't undo what I did. I can't give you back the years of suffering, the lost opportunities, the sleepless nights worrying about bills. But I can do 3 things. Robert opened a folder and distributed documents. First, financial compensation. I have calculated 5 years of salary that each of you lost due to the unjust dismissal, adjusted for inflation. It has been deposited into a specific account. Accept it or refuse it. The choice is yours." A murmur ran through the room. Someone asked, "How much?" "It varies per person, depending on the salary they earned," Robert explained. "The average is $150,000 per person, a total of $6.5 million distributed among the 40 of you." Stunned silence. Charles finally spoke. "Why? Why do this?" "Because I owe it to you," Robert answered simply. "Not just financially, but morally. And because the money I have now was recovered from the fraud that destroyed me. I learned that stolen and returned money should be used to repair damage, not to rebuild a personal empire." Second, he continued, I am creating an educational foundation. 20 jobs are available. Teachers, coordinators, administrators, security guards, cooks, fair wages, full benefits, a respectful environment. If anyone here is interested, interviews start next week. Third, Robert concluded, an apology. Genuine, humble, inadequate, but sincere. I apologize for what I did, for the suffering I caused, for the arrogance that made me think your jobs were worth less than my yacht. I apologize even knowing that words cannot compensate for actions. He stood up. You can stay. Talk among yourselves. Have some coffee and snacks. Or you can leave. Or you can yell at me, confront me, tell me everything I deserve to hear. I will be here for all of it. No one moved for several long seconds. Then Charles Reed stood up. He walked towards Robert, stopping a few feet away. The two men looked at each other. Laura is fine, Charles said. She turned 10 last month. She still draws horses. She wants to be a veterinarian when she grows up. I'm glad, Robert said sincerely. Very glad. I don't forgive you, Charles continued. Not completely. What you did was cruel and unnecessary, but I recognize that you are trying to be better, and that counts for something. He extended his hand. Robert shook it, feeling the weight of a partial but significant reconciliation. Others began to approach. Some hugged Robert, others just greeted him formally. 3 left without speaking, refusing to even look at him. Robert accepted it all, every reaction, every judgment. Amanda Gibson was the last to approach. She was holding an envelope. My father left this, she said. He asked me to keep it until I found the right moment to deliver it. I think that moment is now. Robert took the envelope with trembling hands. He opened it and found a handwritten letter in Frank Gibson's neat script. Robert, the letter began. If you are reading this, it means Amanda judged it appropriate to deliver it. I am writing this without knowing if you have changed or remained the same man who fired me, but I write with the hope that you have chosen change. I want you to know that I forgive you. Completely. Without reservations. You taught me a lot in the years we worked together. You taught me hotel management, client relations, team leadership. I can't erase that just because you made a mistake at the end. I hope you learn from your mistakes. I hope your daughters teach you the empathy you lost. I hope you find redemption, and I sincerely hope you are happy. After all, unhappy people cause the most damage in the world. Frank. Robert finished reading with tears streaming down his face. He didn't try to hide them. He just cried there, in front of 40 former employees, holding a letter from a dead man who had forgiven him before he had even asked for forgiveness. Mary appeared by his side, her hand on his shoulder, a comforting presence. Several former employees were also crying, touched by the letter, by the raw emotion, by the shared humanity. The meeting lasted for 3 hours. Individual conversations took place, stories were shared, connections were remade. 27 former employees accepted the financial compensation. 13 refused, saying they didn't need it or didn't want it. 18 expressed interest in the jobs at the foundation. When everyone had finally left, Robert and Mary were alone in the empty ballroom. He still held Frank's letter, rereading the words of forgiveness he didn't deserve but desperately needed. "How are you?" Mary asked gently. "Destroyed," Robert admitted, "but also relieved. I've carried the weight of that December for so long. To finally be able to apologize, to look them in the eyes and acknowledge my mistake, it frees something inside me." "You did well," Mary said. "It was brave. Many people in your position would never admit guilt, never try to repair the damage, but you tried. And that matters." Robert carefully folded the letter and put it in his pocket. "Shall we go home?" he asked. "I want to hug our daughters." They returned to Myrtle Beach in the late afternoon. Isabel and Sophia were awake, playing with Mrs. Amelia, who had offered to stay with them. The girls squealed with joy when they saw Robert and Mary running towards them with wobbly steps. Robert picked them both up, one in each arm, kissing their chubby cheeks. "My princesses," he murmured. "Daddy loves you more than anything." Isabel pulled his ear. Sophia tried to stick her finger in his nose. Mary laughed, taking a photo of the messy but perfect moment. That night, after the girls were asleep, Robert and Mary sat on the balcony planning the future. The foundation needed a name, a legal structure, an educational curriculum, a qualified team. It was an ambitious project that would take months to structure properly. "How about the Fresh Start Foundation?" Mary suggested. "Because everyone deserves a chance to start over no matter where they come from." Robert considered it. "It's perfect, simple but meaningful." They talked late into the night, sketching out plans, dreaming big but planning realistically. When they finally went to bed, Robert lay looking at the ceiling, his mind still processing the emotional day. His phone vibrated, a message from Charles Reed. "Laura wants to meet your daughters someday. She said any girl with a dad who tries to be better deserves to have a cool friend. Think about it." Robert smiled in the dark. He replied, "It would be an honor. Name a date and we'll be there." He closed his eyes, feeling a peace he hadn't experienced in years. It wasn't the peace of someone who had won, but of someone who had finally stopped running. The peace of someone who confronts their past, works on their present, and builds a future with integrity. And for the first time in a long time, Robert Ashford slept without nightmares. January brought scorching sun and final decisions. Robert and Mary set their wedding for March, a simple ceremony on the beach in Myrtle Beach. Nothing ostentatious, nothing exaggerated, just 30 close guests celebrating a love built amidst the ruins. The Fresh Start Foundation was taking shape. Robert rented an old building in Charleston's Neck area, an underprivileged community that desperately needed educational investment. Renovations began in February, transforming the abandoned building into a vibrant school with 12 classrooms, a library, a cafeteria, and a sports court. 18 former employees were hired, forming the core of the team. Charles Reed accepted the position of maintenance coordinator. Paula Jennings, the one who had questioned Robert at the first meeting, became the administrative director. Each brought experience and dedication, building something significant together. In February, Robert received an unexpected call. His mother, Mrs. Cecilia, was calling for the first time in 11 months. Her voice trembled when she spoke. "Robert, it's me, your mother." "Hi, Mom," he replied cautiously. An awkward silence. Then she said, "I read about the foundation in the newspaper, about you compensating the fired employees, about the wedding that's going to happen. And I realized I made a terrible mistake by abandoning you when you needed me most." Robert didn't know what to say. The hurt was still there, an open wound of maternal rejection when his world was falling apart. "Your sister wants to talk too," Mrs. Cecilia continued. "Can we come see you, talk in person? We don't expect forgiveness, just a chance to apologize properly." Robert looked at Mary, who was listening from across the room. She nodded encouragingly. "You can come," he said, "but I want you to meet Mary and Isabel and Sophia. The whole family or nothing." "Of course," his mother agreed, relieved. "The whole family." They arrived the following Saturday. Mrs. Cecilia was 68, her hair now completely white, her face marked by worry and regret. His sister, Julianne, 40, brought gifts for the twins, an obvious attempt to make up for her absence. Isabel and Sophia, now 1 year and 3 months old, were shy at first, but soon warmed up to their grandmother and aunt. Mrs. Cecilia cried as she held her granddaughters for the first time, murmuring apologies that the babies didn't understand, but that needed to be said. They sat in the living room, the conversation tense at first but gradually relaxing. Julianne explained how Charleston society had judged them cruelly when the scandal broke, how social pressure had made them choose distance over support. "But that doesn't justify it," she admitted. "Family should be there in the worst moments, not just the best. We failed you, Robert. We failed you terribly." Mrs. Cecilia held Mary's hand. "You took care of my son when I should have. You raised my granddaughters when I should have helped. I have no words to thank you properly." Mary squeezed her hand back. "Family isn't just blood," she said gently. "It's a choice. You chose to stay away. Now you're choosing to come back. What matters is what you do from now on." Robert watched the interaction, feeling layers of resentment slowly peel away. Forgiving wasn't forgetting, but it was choosing not to let bitterness poison the future. "Can you come to the wedding?" he asked. "If you want to, of course." Mrs. Cecilia's face lit up. "Can we?" "I would love to." "Then come," Robert said, "and get to know Mary for real. The woman who saved me. The mother my daughters chose. The person who taught me the real meaning of unconditional love." March arrived with perfect weather. The wedding took place at sunset on a quiet beach, golden sand, gentle waves, a warm breeze. 30 guests sat in white chairs arranged in a semicircle. Gregory Thorne and his wife, former employees who had become friends, Mrs. Amelia, Charles and Laura Reed, Mrs. Cecilia and Julianne, colleagues from the foundation. Isabel and Sophia, dressed in identical white dresses, were imperfect and adorable flower girls, toddling down the makeshift aisle, throwing petals everywhere but on the ground. Mary walked barefoot onto the sand in a simple flowing white dress with natural flowers in her hair, her smile brighter than the setting sun. Robert waited for her at the altar made of bamboo and white fabrics, wearing a light beige suit, also barefoot, his heart so full it ached. The officiant was a priest from the Neck community, a 70-year-old man who had met Robert through the foundation and offered his services for free. The ceremony was brief but deeply meaningful. Robert and Mary wrote their own vows. She went first, her voice firm despite her tears. "Robert, when I met you, you were broken, not just financially but spiritually. It could have been just a job, just a salary, just a professional obligation. But you showed me a man willing to change, to grow, to admit his flaws and work to correct them. You showed me that redemption is possible when there is humility and genuine love." She wiped away a tear. "I promise to be your partner in everything, in the foundation we're building, in raising our daughters, in the struggles to come. I promise to always remind you of where we came from and where we're going. I promise to love you, not despite your imperfections, but including them. Because real love embraces the whole person, not just the convenient parts." Robert took a deep breath, preparing his own vows. "Mary, you showed up with formula and diapers when I didn't even know how to make a bottle. But you brought more than physical provisions. You brought hope when there was none left. You brought love when I didn't deserve it. You brought family when everyone had abandoned me." His voice wavered slightly, but he continued. "I promise to honor your sacrifice by being a better man every day. I promise to raise our daughters with the values you taught me. I promise to never forget what it's like to have nothing, so that I will always value everything we have. I promise to love you with increasing, not decreasing, intensity, because you deserve a love that grows with time, not one that fades with routine." They exchanged simple silver rings, engraved on the inside with "always," the word Mary had used when she promised to stay. They kissed as the sun disappeared over the horizon, the applause mixing with the sound of the waves. The reception was a modest but joyful celebration. A barbecue on the beach, live music from a guitar and vocals, dancing barefoot in the sand. Isabel fell asleep in Mrs. Cecilia's arms. Sophia danced with Charles until her little arms grew tired. Robert watched it all, engraving every moment in his memory. A year ago he was bankrupt, desperate, alone. Now he was surrounded by people who chose to love him, not for the money he had, but for the person he had become. Years passed in a rapid montage of significant moments. The Fresh Start Foundation opened its doors in June, welcoming its first class of 80 children aged 5 to 10. The demand was so great that the waiting list reached 300 names in the first month. Robert and Mary worked side by side. He focused on operations and finance, she developing a curriculum that blended traditional education with ethical values. They hired passionate teachers, cooks who prepared nutritious meals, and psychologists who offered emotional support. The results were extraordinary. Children who arrived academically behind caught up by years in a matter of months. Families reported positive behavioral changes. The Neck community, once marked by violence and neglect, began to transform. Gregory Thorne was, true to his promise, offering free consulting, connecting Robert with other philanthropists and helping to expand the foundation to other cities. In 2 years, the Fresh Start Foundation was operating in 3 South Carolina municipalities. In 5 years, there were 10 units in 4 states. Isabel and Sophia grew up surrounded by education and solid values. Mary was the mother Vanessa never wanted to be, present for every tooth that came in, every word learned, every scraped knee, every achievement and frustration. The girls never knew about their maternal abandonment until they were old enough to ask. Robert and Mary explained with age-appropriate honesty, "Your biological mother couldn't be a mother, but you have the mother who chose you, and that is stronger than any blood tie." Isabel and Sophia called Mary Mom without hesitation, without doubt. And Mary absolutely deserved the title. 10 years after their wedding, Robert was 52, with graying hair and expression lines from smiling so much. Mary, 38, remained beautiful in a way that time only refined. Isabel and Sophia, 15, were intelligent and compassionate teenagers, mirrors of the values they had learned. One December evening, the twins called for a formal family meeting. They sat their parents down in the living room, serious but excited. "We've turned 15, Isabel began, "and we need to talk about something important." Sophia continued, "You know we have money saved up. The inheritance our biological mother left before she left. $50,000, Robert confirmed, "locked until you turn 18. Why are you thinking about this now?" The twins looked at each other. Isabel went on, "We've been thinking a lot about what to do with that money, about what it represents. Our biological mother left it, possibly out of guilt, possibly out of obligation. But it wasn't. Given with love. And we want to do something with love," Sophia said, "something that makes a real difference." They pulled out already prepared documents. "We want to donate all of it to the Fresh Start Foundation, the full 50,000, to expand to more cities, to give opportunities to more children who need it." Robert and Mary were stunned. "Girls," Mary began, "that's a lot of money. Money that could pay for your college, give you financial security, buy houses in the future." "We don't need it," Isabel said firmly. "You two taught us that real wealth isn't in a bank account. It's in making a difference in people's lives, in choosing purpose over possessions." Sophia completed the thought. "Dad lost 50 million and gained everything that matters. We want to do the same. Choose meaning over money." Robert looked at Mary, both with tears in their eyes. Their daughters, only 15, already understood lessons he had taken 40 years to learn. "Are you absolutely sure?" he asked. "Absolutely," they replied in unison. "Then we'll do it," Mary said, "but you will participate in the decisions on how to use the money. It will be your project too." The Swiss twins hugged their parents, a moment of deep family connection. Then they pulled away with mischievous smiles. "There's one more thing," Isabel said. "We want the first new unit to be named the Fresh Start Foundation, Frank Gibson Campus, in honor of the man who forgave when he didn't have to." Robert felt as if his heart would burst. "How do you know about Frank Gibson?" "We read the letter," Sophia admitted. "The one you keep in your desk drawer. Sorry for snooping, but we wanted to understand our family history better, and his story deeply touched us." Robert couldn't speak, emotion blocking his words. Mary answered for him. "It would be an honor to name a unit after him." "Thank you, girls, for being exactly who you are." That night, lying next to Mary, Robert reflected on the impossible journey he had lived. From an arrogant millionaire to a desperate bankrupt, from a broken man to a dedicated father, from a selfish entrepreneur to a focused philanthropist. "Losing everything was the best thing that ever happened to me," he said in the dark. Mary snuggled closer. "Why?" "Because losing 50 million taught me that I never had real wealth when I had everything. I only found true wealth when I had nothing but you, the girls, and the chance to start over as a better person." Mary kissed his shoulder. "You became exactly the man you always had the potential to be. You just needed to lose the excess to find the essential." Robert turned to her. "I love you. More today than yesterday. More tomorrow than today. Increasingly, as I promised." "And I love you," Mary replied, "for choosing to change, for having the courage to admit your mistakes, for building something meaningful from the ashes of what you lost." They fell asleep in each other's arms, two survivors who had found more than survival. They had found redemption through consciously chosen love, an intentionally built family, a purpose discovered painfully but blessedly. The Fresh Start Foundation continued to grow. 20 new units opened in the following 3 years, each named in honor of someone who had made a difference: Frank Gibson, Richard Evans, Mrs. Peterson who had saved Mary, and other unsung heroes who deserved to be remembered. Thousands of children received education and values. Hundreds of families were transformed. Dozens of communities were revitalized. Not by money alone, but by systematically applied love, by ethical choices repeated daily, by imperfect people constantly striving to be better. Robert Ashford, at 57, looked back with no regrets. The hotel empire he had built had crumbled, but the educational foundation he created thrived. The marriage of convenience he had ended, but the love he had consciously chosen grew. The riches he had accumulated through greed had vanished, but the legacy he had built through purpose would remain for generations. Sitting on the balcony of their apartment in Myrtle Beach, now more spacious but still modest, he watched Mary, gardening with Isabel and Sophia. The three of them were laughing at something, their hands dirty with soil, pure joy radiating from them. And Robert Ashford, the man who had everything and lost everything only to gain what truly mattered, smiled. There were no adequate words for the gratitude he felt. Gratitude for a second chance. Gratitude for Mary showing up with formula when he needed salvation. Gratitude for daughters who learned the values he had taught late but sincerely. Gratitude for every person who forgave when they didn't have to. Gratitude for a life rebuilt on a foundation of humility instead of arrogance. Real wealth, he finally understood, was never about how much you own. It was always about how much you give, how much you love, how much you choose to be better, even when it would be easier to remain worse. And in that understanding, Robert Ashford found a peace that no amount of money had ever bought, or ever could. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope the story of Robert and Mary has touched your hearts deeply. This journey of downfall, redemption, and love reminds us that it's never too late to start over. That family is built through conscious choices, and that true wealth lies not in bank accounts, but in authentic relationships and meaningful purpose. If this story resonated with you, please leave a comment sharing which part moved you the most. Have you ever gone through difficult new beginnings? Have you ever been saved by someone's unexpected kindness? We would love to hear your stories. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell to receive alerts for new stories we publish daily. Every story we tell explores the complexity of human life, the challenges we face, and the extraordinary capacity we all have to turn tragedy into triumph. Please leave a like if you enjoyed this journey with Robert and Mary, and if you know someone who needs to hear a message of hope and new beginnings, please share this video. Together, we create a community that believes in second chances, unconditional love, and the constant possibility of becoming better versions of ourselves. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you in the next story. Until then.